Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a mystery that has intrigued historians, astronomers, and myth lovers for centuries. Imagine you're standing in ancient Babylon, a city renowned for its towering ziggurats, grand gardens, and bustling markets. It's a clear night, and as you look up, you're used to the familiar sight of stars filling the sky. But tonight something is terribly wrong. All the stars have vanished. No twinkling lights, no shimmering constellations, just an empty, black expanse stretching from horizon to horizon. You blink, rub your eyes, check again. Still nothing. A sky stripped bare. Not even a flicker. You start to wonder if you've gone blind. But no, you can still see the torches flickering on the streets below, the faint glow of oil lamps from high balconies. It's not you. It's the sky. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always interesting to hear how different parts of the world experience time, especially when we're about to dive into such a timeless story. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand frozen, heart thudding faintly against the calm of the desert night. The air is unusually warm. A gentle breeze brushes against your robe, but it doesn't soothe your nerves. This isn't just a dark night, it's a wrong night. You feel it deep in your gut, the same way a dog knows when an earthquake's coming. Something ancient inside you is stirring. A few others notice it too. A child clutches his father's hand and points upward, confused. A street vendor snuffs out his fire and looks around, squinting at the heavens like they've personally offended him. Even the drunkard in the alley has stopped mumbling, frozen mid-hiccup as he gazes upward in disbelief. The stars have always been there. They are your calendar, your compass, your God's diary. Tonight, they're gone. And the silence that follows is almost ceremonial. No dogs barking, no drunk laughter, no creak of wagon wheels, just stillness. You shuffle forward through the darkened streets, passing sandstone walls and wooden doorways carved with protective symbols. Every few houses, a shrine flickers faintly. Marduk's eye, Ishtar's sigil, Nabu's scroll. You pause beneath the temple's shadow, hoping for some sense of order, of reassurance. The temple guards are talking in hushed tones, even their bronze weapons held closer to their chests. You can tell they've noticed too, but no one dares raise an alarm. What do you even call this? It's not a fire. It's not a flood. It's a celestial absence, a vanishing. Above the rooftops, you can barely make out the silhouette of a Temenanki, the towering ziggurat that's supposed to connect heaven and earth. Tonight it just looks smaller, like someone cut the rope between the two. Historians still argue whether this event really happened, or whether it was a myth amplified over generations. Some suggest it could have been a vast dust storm or volcanic ash cloud that veiled the stars. Others propose supernatural interpretations. Babylonian records hint at a time when the heavens closed their eyes. What's agreed upon is that something so disturbing, so abnormal, took place that it would be remembered for centuries. As you continue walking, your mind flicks through recent omens. There was that river that ran strangely red last week, the goat that refused to be sacrificed, the merchant who claimed he saw a flame spiral upward and vanish. Were they all warnings? Is this the result? You finally stop near a canal bridge, resting your arms against the warm stone, a soft ripple of water below. The city behind you feels tense. You can't see the moon. You can't even see Venus, the morning star, the bright jewel of Ishtar. That one's usually so loud in the sky it practically yells, "You are not alone." But tonight, silence. Cosmic silence. You wonder what the royal priests are doing right now. Surely they've noticed. Surely the ones who read the stars like holy script are panicking, or pretending not to. There's no emergency bell, no public wailing, just this aching blankness above you. One man, wrapped in thick wool and smelling like roasted onions, walks past you, muttering, "The gods have turned their backs, mark my words." You pretend not to hear him, but your hands won't stop trembling. Your gaze returns upward, searching, hoping. But the heavens remain mute, an infinite void where the constellations used to dance. The scorpion is gone, the great twins are gone, the archer, the goatfish, the lion, all missing as if plucked from existence. And just when you think you see a flicker, It turns out to be a burning torch reflected off a high window. Your heart sinks again. At some point you realise you're not the only one keeping vigil. Across the rooftops and temple stairs, others are doing the same, scattered silhouettes, quietly watching. Silent astronomers, unspeaking priests, restless souls waiting for a sign that the universe hasn't fractured. One joke does come to mind. If you had a drachma for every star missing tonight, you'd still have nothing. Eventually you peel yourself from the bridge and start heading home, steps dragging. The night feels stretched, as though time itself is holding its breath. A stray cat mews beside a cart of figs, and the sound almost startles you. You smile faintly. At least the cat's still here. That has to mean something, right? But as you close your door, pull the heavy curtain shut and blow out your lamp, you lie in your bed with eyes wide open, facing the darkness above, and for the first time in your life, the ski doesn't look back. You wake up the next morning to the scent of date bread and the low murmur of neighbours chatting in the courtyard. For a moment you forget the night before. The warmth of the sun peeking through the slats of your shutters, the clink of clay cups, even the hum of temple bells. Everything feels so ordinary, so intact. Then it hits you. You throw open the shutters and look to the sky. But it's morning, of course. The sun is out, blazing across the city like nothing ever happened. The stars are gone, but now they should be. Your mind races with questions. Was it real? Did anyone else see it? Or did you dream the whole thing? You step into the narrow alley, where the white walls of homes are already soaking up the desert heat. A young boy runs past with a goat on a string, giggling as if the sky hadn't collapsed. A water seller passes you, shouting prices. And across the courtyard, two women argue over the quality of lentils. Life, apparently, has resumed. But not for you. Your feet turn automatically toward the heart of the city, toward Etemenanki, the massive temple tower that rises like a stairway to heaven. This ziggurat is more than architecture. It's the spine of Babylon, the very connection point between gods and men. If anything or anyone can make sense of what you saw last night, it's here. As you walk, the streets widen and sharpen. Granite and brick. Arched gates carved with lions and bulls. Vendors line the paths, selling trinkets, olives, tiny baked fish wrapped in leaves. But the chatter has a nervous edge. You catch fragments. Said he couldn't see the moon at all. The stars went black, I swear it. My cousin in Borsippa says it looked normal there. You slow down. Others did see it. It wasn't just you. The sky really vanished. Near the Ishtar gate you pass under the towering blue tiles glazed with mythical beasts. The sacred lions stare out with fixed eyes, eternally mid-prowl. Inside the gate, guards in feathered helmets keep order, but even they seem distracted. One keeps looking up at the sky, even though it's empty blue now. Just habit, maybe. Or fear. The ziggurat is close now, its steps carved so sharply they look like a stairway built for giants. At the base you hear chanting. Monks, or more accurately the Chaldeans, the elite priest astronomers of Babylon. These are the ones who read the sky like a book, who whisper to gods through the placement of stars. If anyone is losing sleep right now, it's them. You ascend slowly. It's not just the stairs, it's the weight. The realization that you're not going to find comfort at the top, only more questions. The platform buzzes with quiet urgency. Scribes pace in their robes, clay tablets clutched like lifelines. Astronomers squint through polished obsidian lenses, double-checking. Nothing. There's a brazier burning, and beside it, an older priest is hunched over a tablet. He doesn't even look up when you step forward. You clear your throat softly. He waves you off, muttering in Akkadian, but you stay. And finally he sighs, straightens and glances your way. You saw it, he says. You nod. He nods back slowly. So did we. He turns the tablet toward you, revealing a diagram scratched in haste, a sky chart with no points, just a black square where constellations should be. We have no words for this, he says. The skies never fail to answer. Historians still argue whether this account was a poetic interpretation of a real astronomical phenomenon or a religious allegory that evolved into myth, but fragments from actual Babylonian clay tablets, written in cuneiform, do exist, describing periods of darkness above the firmament and nights without signs. One theory suggests a regional dust veil caused by volcanic eruption, scattering light and blocking stars. Another fringe theory oddly popular among amateur historians and TikTok pseudoscientists, claims it was a passing rogue planet. Take your pick. Back on the ziggurat, the priest lets you sit beside him. You watch as a young scribe returns, breathless. No change, he says. Still no visibility from the east wall. The sky is mute. Mute, the priest repeats almost reverently. That's a new word for it. A few of the others whisper together, most of them debating what this means. You overhear snatches. Is it Nergal? A punishment? No, Ishtar is wounded. The morning star's absence proves it. Perhaps a demon ascended. You realise with a start that even the most educated minds in Babylon are just as confused as the fishmongers in the streets. The difference is vocabulary. One of the older scribes lights a small brazier and tosses in a bundle of reeds. A puff of smoke swirls upward, and he watches the way it twists. Even the smoke does not rise straight, he mutters. It's not just the stars. Something else is off. You're offered a sip of barley tea, lukewarm and bitter. You drink it anyway. The ziggurat is quiet now, only the soft scratching of styluses on clay and the rustle of robes in the breeze. Occasionally someone checks the horizon. Nothing. A younger priest approaches the elder. Should we begin preparation for the full rite? The elder frowns. Not yet. Let us wait for confirmation from Eer. The idea that this might not be limited to Babylon chills you. If the stars have gone dark everywhere. No. You shake the thought too early to panic globally. Still, you can't ignore the feeling crawling up your spine. You glance skyward one last time before descending the stairs. A pure blue expanse greets you. Innocent. Blank. Deceptive. As you make your way back into the city, the noise of daily life feels staged. The people are trying too hard to act normal. A man selling pomegranates keeps glancing over his shoulder. A girl drops a jug and doesn't even flinch at the crash. You wonder if this is what the end of a world feels like. Not fire, not flood, but silence from above. And in Babylon, silence from the stars is the loudest omen of all. You take the long way home, partly because you're hoping to hear someone, anyone, offer an explanation that makes sense, and partly because you're stalling. Deep down, you know something isn't just broken in the sky, it's broken in the world. You trail along the eastern edge of the Euphrates, where fishermen haul their nets and call to one another, but even here the tone is off. Not hushed exactly. Just wrong. Near the riverbank, you pass by the outer wall of the Temple of Nabu, scribe god and keeper of destiny. A pair of apprentices are sweeping dust from the steps. One pauses to stare upward, squinting against the daylight. They won't come back, he whispers to the other. You stop walking. The second apprentice whispers something back. Something about punishment, about stolen scrolls. It's all speculation. Everyone has a theory now. You turn toward the city centre again, weaving past herb vendors and bead merchants, until you find yourself once more at the base of the ziggurat. This time, though, you don't climb. You wait and watch as others do. There's a steady stream of white-robed Chaldeans heading up, and from their brisk steps and tight jaws, you know this isn't just another sky check. Something is happening. You hear shouting. Not from the ziggurat, but from below, in the open plaza where offerings are usually made, a small crowd has gathered. You push in gently and see 3 priests, one younger, one middle-aged, and one so old he looks like he's been carved from dried papyrus, arguing in full view of the people. The gods are silent because we ignored the eclipse, says the young one. No, counters the middle-aged priest. This is the work of a demon who has devoured the stars. The elder priest says nothing for a long moment. Then, in a voice so quiet it makes the crowd lean in, he says, "The gods did not leave us. They are watching to see how we respond without them." Historians still argue whether this reflects a genuine Babylonian theological crisis or a later dramatization by scribes trying to retrofit divine meaning onto natural events. Some clay fragments hint at celestial silence being seen not as punishment, but as a divine test, what scholars today might call a trial by absence. Still, whether that idea came from terrified priests or clever theologians trying to salvage faith, that remains uncertain. The old priest raises both hands and calls for calm. "To the ziggurat," he says. "Let us seek answers from the heavens, even if they refuse to answer." And with that, the crowd follows. You follow too. Not because you expect answers, but because at this point anything is better than standing alone in ignorance. Back at the ziggurat's base, a line has formed. Not of officials, but citizens, Old men with crooked backs, young mothers holding babies, shepherds still smelling of pasture. They've come not to protest or panic, but to ask questions, quietly, politely, desperately. One by one they're being let in. Not into the upper chambers, just into the scriptorium near the base, where low-ranking priests record testimonies and distribute ritual instructions. You manage to slip in behind a merchant woman and take a seat on a smooth stone bench. Across from you, a scribe with thick eyebrows and a stylus shaped like a fish looks up. Name, he says. You give it. Purpose? You hesitate. The stars, you say. I want to understand why they're gone. He doesn't even blink, he just nods and makes a mark on a tablet already full of hash lines. Many are asking, he murmurs. At the next bench, a farmer is offering a hen as an unofficial offering. He has no appointment, no form, just the bird and the hope that someone might take it. A priest accepts it wordlessly and disappears through a beaded curtain. You lean in. What will they do with it? The scribe shrugs. Probably divine its entrails. See if they form a message. You're about to laugh, but you don't. Not today, not after last night. Besides, Babylon has always believed that the gods speak in symbols. Liver spots, the swirl of incense smoke, even the shape of a cloud. With the stars gone, you suppose they have to find messages somewhere. The scribe writes something else down and glances at the curtain. The chief astronomer is speaking with the king. That perks you up. Now? He nods. Has been for hours. You want to ask more, but the woman ahead of you begins sobbing quietly. She clutches a small idol of Ishtar, its paint chipped from years of handling. She's not speaking to me, she whispers. She always used to appear in dreams. No one is speaking, someone mutters. Even the dreams are quiet. Dreams, of course. In Babylon, dreams are sacred conduits. The idea that even dreams have gone mute is almost worse than the sky. You finally leave the chamber. It's too thick with fear. Too many people asking the same unanswerable question. Outside, the sun is already dipping low. You consider going home, but your legs move elsewhere, toward the narrow streets of the Scholars' Quarter, where the city's most eccentric thinkers live. You've heard of one in particular, a Chaldean named Bal-Aki, who once predicted a drought by watching the way sand settled in a jar. Supposedly he speaks to the wind. Worth a shot. You find him seated cross-legged in a courtyard, surrounded by clay figurines and bird bones. He's muttering something to a broken pot. You wait until he pauses to sip water, then clear your throat. You know why they're gone? You ask. He squints at you, then shrugs. Of course. You blink. You do. He leans in dramatically. They didn't disappear, he whispers. They were hidden. By what? A great hand, he says. A divine one, like covering your eyes when you don't want to see. Whose hand? He shrugs again. Yours? Mine? Who can say whose sins turned the gods away? You wait, but he's already gone back to the pot. The stars are gone. The priests are guessing. The people are praying. And the wisest man you could find is talking to a broken bowl. You look up one last time before heading home, just in case. Still nothing. Only now you realise it's not just the stars you miss. It's the feeling that something, someone, was watching back. By the time you reach your doorway, night has arrived again. A gentle breeze sways the fig trees near the courtyard, and distant flutes murmur from someone's window. But your eyes, as always now, are drawn upward, hoping, waiting. Still nothing. You step inside, but sleep doesn't come easily. You toss on your reed mat, eyes darting toward the narrow slit in the ceiling where moonlight once crept in. Except tonight, there is no moonlight. Just a faint blur of nothing. You could almost laugh. Once you worried about taxes and trade routes. Now you lie awake wondering if the gods simply decided to erase themselves. You wake groggy the next morning to the echo of footsteps and the smell of stale incense. Something's happening again. You follow the flow of people toward the great market. It's always noisy here. Livestock, baskets of grain, vendors yelling prices you never believe. But today, it's not the noise that draws your attention. It's the hush, a kind of charged silence rolling through the stalls like the first pressure before a sandstorm. Word is spreading. Someone saw the priest climbing the ziggurat in full ceremonial dress. All of them. That never happens unless something's gone terribly wrong, or terribly right. You edge toward a group of older merchants deep in discussion. One is muttering through toothless gums, 3 times last night, I dreamt of a bull walking backward. Another swears he saw a cloud shaped like a serpent that slithered across the moonless sky. They're grasping at signs, anything that might fill the void where the stars used to be. You recognize one of them, Tarek, a seller of dyed linen and a notorious storyteller. It's the end, he declares, already 5 customers deep in an audience. I heard it from my cousin's brother's apprentice. The king met with Nabu's high priest, and they say the scrolls glowed red. That means fire. That means judgment. You raise an eyebrow. You really believe that? He shrugs. I believe something. Better than believing nothing. Which honestly is fair. Historians still argue whether this period marked a break in Babylonian cosmology, or simply a deepening of its fatalism. Some inscriptions suggest the Babylonians believed the stars didn't just guide fate, they were fate. If that's true, then this starless sky didn't merely represent the loss of celestial light. It signalled the erasure of destiny itself. No map, no compass, just blank. You leave the market and head east, past the artisan quarters, where potters and jewellers are now carving star symbols into their goods, out of longing, you suppose, or superstition. A boy hawks copper pendants shaped like the Great Lion constellation. It's not in the sky, but it might as well hang around your neck. Wear it, he says, and the stars return. You almost buy one. Almost. Instead, your path winds past the outer wall, where city workers tend to the canals. Normally, this is the part of the city no one talks about. It smells of mud and damp straw. But today, a group of labourers are gathered, heads bowed. One's holding a small clay tablet like it's a sacred object. You draw closer. It's a list. Not of goods or rations, but of omens. 3 dreams of birds flying into walls, someone murmurs. A goat refused to eat, says another. One man claims his wife spoke in tongues, though she's mute. They're documenting signs now, recording the absurd. In any other time, you'd call it paranoia. But now it's data. Back in the city centre, a crowd has formed outside the Temple of Ishtar. The high priestess stands on the marble steps, arms raised. The goddess does not abandon Babylon, she cries. She merely tests our faith. A cheer erupts, but it's half-hearted, like a play with too few actors. Some people raise offerings, flowers, jewellery, even a live dove flapping weakly in a straw cage. But more than one person in the crowd mutters under their breath, "If she's testing us, she's being cruel." You don't say it, but you agree. Later that day, near dusk, you find yourself at the edge of the Hanging Gardens. Yes, those Hanging Gardens. The ones tourists in 2025 can't quite agree were real or mythical. You've been here before, but never like this. The terraces are quiet. A few children run between the palms, giggling in defiance of the tension blanketing the city. A gardener waters a lotus plant that refuses to bloom. Even nature seems unsure of what to do. You sit by a fountain where water trickles over lion-shaped spouts, and for a moment, you almost believe everything is fine. But the stars, they haunt the corners of your mind. A scholar sits nearby, scribbling into a wax tablet. You ask what he's writing. A list of vanished things, he replies. Things? He nods. First the stars, then dreams, then my neighbour's memory of his own birthday. You frown. He shrugs. I figure if the sky can forget itself, so can we. A joke, probably, but not funny enough to laugh at. As night returns, you join others who have gathered on rooftops and temple stairs, watching, waiting. Still nothing. No glint, no gleam. No constellation peeking through the black. Just the sky, a blank curtain above you. Not angry, not sad, just absent. And so the city begins to change. People pray more, sleep less. Merchants close early. Children are told not to look at the sky. It might curse them. Even dogs whine more than usual. Ears back, tails down. One night, a man wanders into the square dressed in silver paint, claiming to be the Star Reborn. He climbs a statue and begins singing in an invented language before falling asleep standing up. He's still there in the morning, drooling. The city doesn't stop, but it slows, because when the stars go missing, so does certainty. And Babylon is a city that runs on certainty. Now it limps on doubt. You wake to the sound of temple bells. 3 slow strikes. That's the signal for a public announcement, usually about taxes or royal decrees. But today, everyone already knows what it's about. You barely need to dress before slipping out into the street, joining the steady flow of people headed toward the palace plaza. The sun is sharp overhead, the kind that makes clay roofers bake and wheat merchants squint. But no one complains. Not today. You're all wondering the same thing. What could possibly be said that hasn't already been whispered 100 times this week? At the plaza's edge, guards in crested bronze helmets stand at attention. The king's herald, a man with a voice like thunder trapped in a clay pot, steps forward. He holds a scroll in both hands and unrolls it with the kind of ceremony normally reserved for war victories or coronations. You expect grandeur. Instead, you get honesty. The heavens have withdrawn their signs, he announces, his voice echoing off the marble. The stars, once sentinels of fate, now lie hidden. Our astronomers offer no certainty. Our priests pray in silence. The gods are watching. It's not comforting, but it's real. The king himself doesn't appear, which is already telling, but there's something powerful in the admission. Babylon, mighty and ancient, admits that even she is lost. Historians still argue whether this speech was ever recorded or if it was reconstructed from fragments and folk memory. Some clay tablets mention a royal silence followed by mourning, while others describe a decree of humility. Either way, it marks a turning point, a moment when denial gave way to ritualized uncertainty. The plaza disperses slowly like smoke. People return to their homes, but the air feels heavier now. You watch as an old man removes the star map painted on his shop's awning. The brush strokes are careful, almost mournful, like he's erasing a part of his soul. You head west toward the academic quarter. A friend of yours, Amat Shamasha, is a scribe with access to temple libraries. If anyone has theories that go beyond the gods are upset, it's her. She meets you in the shade of an olive tree, brushing clay dust from her robes. Her eyes are tired, her fingers stained with ink. I've been reading the old omen tablets, she says, looking for precedent. And? She blows out a long breath. There's something, a record from over 2 centuries ago. It mentions a blackening of the firmament, but it says it lasted only one night. And we're on what? Night 4? 5, she corrects. So much for precedent. She unrolls a small scroll, revealing tiny cuneiform marks arranged in columns. This one, she taps, describes a sky devoid of signs but followed by a flood. You raise an eyebrow. You think water's next? I think something's next, she murmurs. Another theory floats to the surface. What if the stars didn't disappear? What if they were taken? Amat Shamash doesn't dismiss it. There's a hymn to Ishtar that speaks of a goddess withdrawing her crown of light in sorrow. Some believe that's a poetic way of describing a disappearing star. Or all of them. It sounds beautiful, but terrifying. You leave the scroll with her and return to the streets, now quieter than you've ever known them. You pass a group of children tossing pebbles in a dry fountain. One is pretending to be a priest. "I call upon the stars," he shouts, raising a stick. "Show us your fire." Another child throws a pebble and misses. "They're not coming back," she says. Children are honest like that. That night you gather with others on your roof again. It's become a ritual now, a shared quiet among neighbours. No one speaks. You bring dates, someone else brings figs, another brings wine. It's less about hope and more about habit. Someone breaks the silence with a joke. Maybe the stars are shy. Another. Maybe they finally got sick of watching us mess things up. You chuckle, but it's hollow. Then someone asks the question no one wants to answer. What if they never come back? The silence that follows is too deep to laugh through. The next morning you wander through the Temple of Marduk, where golden idols gleam beneath high ceilings. A priest is burning juniper and humming a chant so old no one knows the meaning anymore. You light a candle, not for guidance, just for comfort. You overhear a priestess telling a foreign merchant that Marduk has turned his face to the west. The man gasps. "So the stars are behind us?" She frowns. "No, it means he's disappointed." Later that day, at the public baths, people speak more openly. "I haven't had a dream in 6 nights, one man admits. "My daughter hasn't bled this moon cycle," says a woman, eyes wide with implication. "I heard there's a statue in Sippar that weeps salt," someone adds. It's all unravelling. The very routines that made Babylon tick, agricultural calendars, religious festivals, military plans, are built around the stars. Without them, everything slides just slightly off-centre, and you can feel it, like a pot that wobbles before it shatters. You visit a map maker hoping to purchase a star chart, just to feel normal again. But his stall is shuttered. A wax tablet hangs on the door. Closed until further notice. Sky unreliable. Back at home you look out your window at the Tower of Etemenanke. Usually it glows faintly at night. The temple fires reflecting off polished stone. Tonight it's dark, and somehow that's worse than the missing stars. You lie awake again, heartbeat sinking with the deep, slow nothing above. It's no longer just a missing sky. It's an absence of fate. The days blur now. Not because nothing's happening, but because everything is, just beneath the surface. You wake up early, not because you slept well. You didn't. But because your dreams have stopped. And when you can't dream, staying in bed feels useless. The street outside your window is already active, though not in the usual way. There's less shouting, fewer carts, and an eerie lack of music. Babylon, the eternal city of rhythm and order, is offbeat. It's like watching a parade march with no drums. You follow the scent of honeyed barley cakes toward the central plaza, hoping to fill your stomach if not your spirit. A food vendor you know nods as you approach, but his face is pale. "You see the shrine this morning?" he asks, voice low. You shake your head. He leans in. "Someone painted over the stars on the temple of Nana." You blink. Nana, the moon god, one of the oldest celestial deities. His temple dome used to gleam silver in the sunlight, ringed with painted stars. "All black now," the vendor mutters, "covered them with pitch." "Who would do that?" He shrugs. "Some say it was the priests, others say it was a warning, or maybe the gods themselves." You buy a cake and walk on, but it tastes like nothing. You pass the temple district and see for yourself. The paint job isn't neat. It drips like tears down the stone walls. The crowd gathered outside is silent, as if standing at a funeral. You notice someone crying quietly. And that's when it truly hits you. This isn't just a city in crisis. This is a city mourning. Historians still argue whether Babylon underwent an actual civic mourning ritual during the starless nights. Some suggest there were formal fasts and lamentations. Others believe the sorrow was more psychological than liturgical. But whatever form it took, there's no denying that Babylon, proud, mathematical, methodical Babylon, had begun to grieve. You stop by a library run by priest scribes. Normally it's full of hushed scholars and the dry scrape of styluses on clay. Today, silence. Inside, the clay tablets are stacked neatly, except one shelf, usually full of astral charts, is empty. A novice explains, "We pulled them. Too many people asking questions we can't answer." Where are they now? In storage, or maybe back in the kiln. You're burning them? Only the ones that promise things that won't happen anymore. It's hard to argue with that logic. You walk through the palace gardens at midday, hoping for a moment of peace, only to find that even nature seems confused. The pomegranate trees are blooming early. A strange omen. Off-cycle harvests usually mean divine unrest. But now you can't tell if anything's truly divine, or just broken. A gardener nearby notices you staring and says, "Maybe the gods are rushing everything before they go." You don't respond. You spend the afternoon in a public square where debates often happen. Philosophers, poets, merchants. Anyone with a voice and a theory is welcome. Today, the discussion centres on what's really happening. A man in faded robes stands on an overturned basket yelling, "It's all a test! The gods want to know if we still believe when we can't see." Someone else counters, "No, they're gone. All of them. They've moved on. To another people, another land." Then a third voice, soft but firm, cuts through. Or maybe they're waiting for us to change before they come back. You don't know which theory is worse. Nearby a woman sits carving small stars into wax tablets and handing them to passers-by. "Hold one," she says, "and you'll dream again." You take one. It feels warm, maybe from her hands, maybe something else. That night your neighbour, a weaver with a husky voice and a fondness for goat cheese, comes knocking. She's never visited you before. "I couldn't stay in my house," she says. "Too quiet." You make tea. She brings dates. And for a while you sit together on the roof, looking up at the sky that still offers nothing in return. She breaks the silence. "When I was a girl, my grandmother said the stars were the eyes of the gods." You nod. "She said they watched everything. That if you did wrong, a star would wink out." You wait. "She was wrong," she says softly. "We're still here, but all the stars are gone." You don't know what to say, so you just sit there, shoulder to shoulder, beneath a blank sky. Somewhere below, a group begins to chant. It's not official, no priests, no altar, just people, gathered around a fire humming a wordless song that rises slowly into the void. It's not about restoring the stars, it's about being heard or remembered. You listen, you hum too, and for the first time in days, something inside you doesn't feel entirely hollow. Later, alone again, you stare out at the city. Somewhere a dog barks, somewhere a clay pot breaks, life continues, but always under this new sky, a sky that no longer speaks. You hold the little wax star in your hand and whisper to it, just in case it still listens. The next morning you wake to a curious sound. Laughter. Not the drunken kind, not the desperate laughter before tears kind. Real laughter. 2 children chasing a hoop down the street shrieking with joy. For a split second you forget everything. You want to hold on to that sound, bottle it, wear it around your neck like a talisman. But of course, it fades. You step outside and notice something else. The temple bells are ringing in a different rhythm, a pattern not heard in years. You pause. Others pause. Even the goats pause. It's the sound used for royal ceremony. That's when you realise it's the 7th day since the stars disappeared. And in Babylon, 7 isn't just a number. It's sacred. It marks rest, ritual, rebirth. A man passing by mutters, "They'll have to do something today." You nod, even though you don't know what something means anymore. The sun is climbing as you join the slow procession toward the palace. Crowds thicken with every corner turned. Priests in crisp linen, nobles in deep-dyed robes, servants balancing fruit baskets atop their heads. At the gates of the palace plaza, guards let people through in small groups. There's tension in their shoulders. You wonder how much sleep they've gotten. Once inside, you see them, the full priesthood, lined in rows before the great altar. Their faces are painted in ceremonial ash. Their hands, raised to the sky, tremble just slightly. There's no music, no chants, just silence. Then, finally, the king steps forward. He wears white. No jewels, no crown, no scepter. Just a simple robe, plain as sand. The symbolism is obvious. Even he is humbled now. "I have watched the heavens," he begins, his voice carrying, measured. "I have prayed, I have fasted, I have waited like all of you for a sign. And none came." The crowd shifts uneasily. "I do not claim to know the mind of the gods, but I know this. Babylon cannot walk blindly forever." A woman nearby whispers, "He's admitting weakness." A man responds, "No, he's asking for guidance." The king raises both hands. "Tonight, we will offer our voices, no blood, no fire, no fear, only voices. If the gods hear us, let them answer. If not, we will still sing." It's not what people expected, but somehow it's exactly what was needed. Historians still argue whether this so-called Night of 1,000 Voices ever happened. Some tablets reference the evening of great chanting, while others make no mention at all. A fringe theory suggests it was invented centuries later as a symbol of collective faith during cosmic silence. But whether literal or metaphorical, the impact is the same. You return home to prepare. People everywhere are gathering, not in temples, but in streets, courtyards, rooftops. Wherever voices can rise, you join a group on the ziggurat's lower steps, where families are laying blankets and lighting oil lamps. A priest walks past, offering scrolls with ancient hymns. You take one, but your eyes keep drifting to the sky. Still nothing. Then someone begins to hum. A child joins in. Then an old woman with cracked lips. Then you. Then dozens. Hundreds. The city begins to vibrate with sound. Not coordinated, not polished, just honest. You hear a sailor singing a river chant, a baker murmuring a prayer between verses, a soldier crying mid-hymn, gripping a copper charm like it's all he has left. No one conducts. No one leads. Babylon for once sings without direction. Somewhere far off, a horn blows. Another joins it. You feel it in your chest. Time loses meaning. You don't know how long you've been singing. An hour? 3? But the sky above remains unchanged, empty, unforgiving. And yet, it doesn't hurt as much tonight, because for the first time in a week, Babylon isn't whispering about stars. It's speaking directly to them. You catch your neighbour's eye. She's still holding the wax star you gave her. She presses it to her lips and smiles. Later, after the singing fades into scattered murmurs and soft prayers, you stay on the ziggurat alone. The air has cooled. A breeze stirs your robe. You lie back, arms behind your head, watching the nothingness. And that's when you realize something strange. You don't feel fear tonight. You feel ready. Not because you expect the stars to return, but because finally you understand. The sky may be silent, but you are not. You wake up late the next morning, throat dry and muscles aching. Singing for hours under a voiceless sky does that to a person. Your ears are still buzzing from the shared echoes of last night, and your dreams, if you had any, left no trace. Just the faint imprint of sound and the warmth of being surrounded. When you step outside, the city feels different. Not brighter, not louder, but steadier, like a ship that stopped listing. The bakery's open again, and the smell of spice cakes wafts down the street. Someone's sweeping their stoop while humming under their breath. A pair of boys race past you with a carved wooden lion on wheels. Life, it seems, hasn't ended. Still, you look up. Still no stars. But you don't flinch this time. You just breathe, squint, and move on. By midday, word spreads quickly. New rituals are being performed. Not the old ones. These are different, unofficial, invented, adapted, and yet they spread like wildfire. You follow the noise to the temple of Adad, the storm god. His priests are standing barefoot in shallow water, chanting names of constellations as if summoning them back. A woman drapes herself in black linen embroidered with golden dots and walks a spiral path etched into the temple floor, leaving behind small beads of myrrh. Every step, a star, she whispers. On the far end of the temple courtyard, a scribe draws star charts in the dirt using river mud. A child watches closely, then begins mimicking the gesture with a stick. "This one's the scorpion," the scribe says gently. "He protects dreams." Someone else is painting stars on her arms. "If they're not up there," she says, "they can live here." You spend the rest of the afternoon wandering from ritual to ritual. Some are solemn, some silly. One group is tossing pomegranate seeds into a fountain, making wishes. Another forms a line and leaps over a small flame while chanting, "Don't forget us, don't forget us." Historians still argue whether these makeshift rituals were encouraged by the priesthood or grew from grassroots desperation. Some suspect it was a mix, a people scrambling to fill the spiritual vacuum left by the sky's silence, while the priestly elite tried to steer the narrative. Others argue these moments reflect a deeper truth. When the heavens fail to speak, the people find new ways to listen. You pause beside a group performing a curious ceremony involving coloured sand. They form star patterns with trembling fingers, saying each name aloud. The lion, the archer, the goatfish, the great twins. As each shape forms, the wind scatters it just slightly, as if the sky itself is playing along. That night the city glows not with celestial light, but with the flicker of thousands of oil lamps. People are placing them in windows, on ledges, in rows along canals. You join in, lighting one and whispering the name of the first star you ever learned. For you, it was Sirius, the dog star. You can't even remember who taught it to you. Maybe your father, maybe a temple teacher. But it was always there, sharp and faithful above the city. Now it isn't. But your lamp still flickers. On the roof, your neighbour joins you again. She's holding a bowl of honeyed figs and a sheet of papyrus. "It's a song," she says. "I wrote it last night for the stars." You listen as she sings it. It's simple, sad, something about the sky having eyelids, about waiting for them to blink again. When she finishes, she smiles at you and says, "I used to be terrified of the dark. Not anymore." "Why not?" She shrugs. "Because now I know what it feels like when we light it up ourselves." Across the city, faint music rises. Flutes, drums, voices, even laughter. Laughter that isn't mocking the gods, but laughing in spite of their silence. You glance upward. Still nothing. But the night no longer feels empty. It feels reclaimed. For the first time since the stars disappeared, Babylon breathes like itself again. No one says it aloud, but a thought creeps through the city like a shared dream. If the gods won't speak, we'll write our own sky. Later, before sleep, you wander to the edge of the temple district, where a group of children has gathered with their parents. Someone has built a star projector of sorts, just a hollow gourd carved with pinholes. Inside, a tiny lamp flickers. When turned just right, the gourd casts patterns of light onto the nearby wall. The children gasp. The constellations come to life again, clumsy, incomplete, flickering, but alive. A little girl tugs at your robe. Look, the goatfish is back. You kneel beside her and smile. Maybe, you whisper, it never left. You go to sleep that night feeling strangely whole, not because the stars have returned, but because something else has. Hope. You wake the next morning before the sun, pulled from sleep by the faint sound of drums. Not war drums. Those are sharp and cold, meant to cut through bone. These are slow, steady, like a heartbeat echoing through the stones of the city. You throw on your robe and step into the pale morning. The streets are already alive. Today is not a market day. It's not a festival. And yet, Babylon moves, like it remembers something sacred. You follow the drums, past the weaving quarter, past the empty fountain where children used to play, through the gate of Shamash, where guards bow their heads as you pass, not to you, but to the silence that follows. Finally, you reach the foot of Etemenanki, the great ziggurat, still towering, still solemn, but now surrounded by an unusual gathering. This time it's not just priests, it's carpenters, bakers, scribes, beggars, merchants, a woman with a flower cart, a boy with a bird cage. They've all come, not to demand the return of the stars, not even to question their absence. They've come to honour it. A young priest stands at the base, his robe streaked with ink, his face tired but clear. He speaks softly, but his voice carries. 7 days we've waited, he says. 7 nights we've stared into the silence. And though the stars have not returned, our voices have. He holds up a small clay tablet. On it, a rough carving of a star and a hand reaching toward it. This is not scripture, he says. It's a wish. He places it in a clay jar at the foot of the temple. Others follow. One by one, people drop offerings, not of gold or grain, but of handmade stars. Wax, stone, wood, stitched into cloth, drawn in charcoal. They place them gently, reverently. This is not desperation. It's acknowledgement. Historians still argue whether Babylon ever officially recognized the event with a rite like this. No records remain that confirm it. But archaeological fragments, jars filled with star-shaped carvings, layers of soot on otherwise polished altars, hint at something unusual, something outside the typical ritual framework. You wander the edge of the gathering, observing faces. Some are tear-streaked, others peaceful. No one looks up anymore. Everyone is looking forward, or inward. You spot Amat Shamash, the temple scribe, kneeling in the dust, carefully placing a folded linen star into the jar. She looks up and sees you. "Do you think this matters?" she asks quietly. You pause. "Does it need to?" She smiles faintly, then rises and dusts off her robes. "We thought the stars were watching us," she says. "Maybe we were meant to watch them, and when they left, maybe it was our turn to become the watchers. It's a beautiful idea. You want to believe it." After the offerings are made, the priests light a small flame on the steps of the ziggurat. No incense, no chanting, just the quiet flicker of fire against stone. You stay until dusk, no stars, but no fear either. Instead, the city begins to move in a strange new rhythm. People gather on rooftops not just to watch, but to create. Musicians bring lyres and drums. Artists paint constellations on tiles. A stonemason carves a replica of the sky from memory onto the plaza wall. Each person builds their own fragment of the lost heavens. You find yourself doing the same. At home, you pull out a scrap of old parchment and begin sketching. Slowly, awkwardly, you draw the archer, the one that always made you feel safe as a child. Your lines wobble. You forget half the stars. But when you're done, it feels close enough. That night, your neighbour knocks again, this time with bread and a question. "Want to help me make sky lanterns?" You do. Together, you craft paper shells with tiny oil lamps inside. A group joins you. Neighbours, strangers, even a retired priest with shaky hands who used to read dreams. You carry the lanterns to the riverbank. One by one, you light them, and one by one you let them go. The lanterns drift upward, slow and golden, reflecting in the black water as if creating a second sky. The breeze carries them out and up, and you watch them disappear into the darkness. A small boy gasps. "Look, the stars are back," you smile. "No," you whisper, "we're just remembering what they looked like." Across Babylon, lanterns rise. A city without stars becomes a city of lights. Small, human, defiant. Every floating flame a message. We're still here. We still remember. We still hope. You fall asleep that night with the scent of oil and parchment in your hair, a wax star beneath your pillow, and the faint hum of someone singing a lullaby to a sky that refuses to sing back. And yet, you sleep peacefully. Because even in darkness, Babylon has learned to shine. The next morning begins with a breeze, not hot and dry like usual, but cool and crisp, the kind that teases the hairs on your arms and makes old men declare, "Change is coming." You step outside and feel it too. The air carries a weight that's different from the days before, not heavier, quieter, as if the city itself is holding its breath. You walk slowly, past the neighbours who now greet each other with a knowing nod instead of words, past a potter who's shaping star-shaped amulets into his clay jars, past a courtyard where a group of children play a game called Catch the Constellation, which involves throwing painted pebbles into drawn circles. You pause to watch. One girl laughs so hard she falls over. It's the sound of life stitched back together. But something else is happening today. Something big. You follow the quiet tide of people flowing toward the palace. Again. But this time, it's not the king who has summoned Babylon. It's the Chaldeans, the famed Stargazers, the scholars, the keepers of the heavens. They've called a public gathering at the base of the ziggurat. Rumour spreads fast. They have an explanation. No one knows if it's scientific, spiritual, or something in between. But after more than a week of silence, even a whisper from the Chaldeans is like thunder. You push through the crowd, managing to squeeze into a spot near the edge of the temple stairs. Dozens of white-robed astronomers line the steps. Each of them carries a tablet or scroll. They look like they haven't slept. One or two sway slightly as they stand, but their eyes, sharp, focused. At the centre is an older man with a voice like Riverstone. You've heard of him? Neremak, chief interpreter of celestial signs. He's known for predicting a lunar eclipse 6 years before it happened, which, honestly, feels more impressive than anything the gods have done lately. He steps forward. "We have searched the heavens," he begins. "We have scoured the charts, the clay records, the signs in the liver, the dreams of children, the shadows on the water." The crowd leans in, and we have found... A pause. Dramatic. Classic Chaldean move. Nothing conclusive. A collective groan rolls through the square like a grumpy ox. But, Neremak continues unfazed. "We have ideas." He explains slowly, methodically. One theory suggests a massive cloud of unseen dust now lies between Earth and the stars. Another suggests divine withdrawal, not abandonment, but retreat. A third posits that the stars are not gone but have moved, beyond current calculations. Historians still argue whether the stars can ever be trusted again, he says, but trust is not given by the sky, it is built by the heart. You blink. Did a Chaldean just philosophize? A hush settles. Then he adds, "The sky may be silent, but it is not void. Listen to its quiet. That too is a message." You swear you feel something in your chest shift. Another priest comes forward holding a tablet. "We have decided," she says, "to name this time. It shall be called Enushamti, the silence of the stars." It sounds sacred, mournful, beautiful. You look around. People are crying again. But they're not tears of panic. They're tears of permission, to feel, to grieve, to wonder. A wave of stillness moves through the crowd like wind through wheat. Someone begins humming the same melody from the Night of 1,000 Voices. Others join in. You don't sing this time. You just listen. It feels holy. After the gathering dissolves, you head toward the riverbank. Along the way, you pass scribes carving Enushamti into fresh clay tablets. This moment is being recorded. You're living inside history. By the time you reach the water, the sun is lowering again. You sit on the stone edge, your toes barely grazing the surface, and stare into the reflection of the sky. No stars. Just deepening blue. And yet, you remember something you overheard days ago. What if this is a test? You're beginning to think that's exactly what it was. Not a punishment, not a plague, just a pause. A space where silence replaced certainty, where faith became less about answers and more about presence. You stay by the river until the sky turns navy, then black. You trace imaginary constellations with your fingertip in the air. The scorpion, the lion, the archer, and suddenly you're not waiting for them anymore. You're remembering them, holding them in your mind like old friends who moved away but still write. You wonder if this is what the gods intended all along, to make Babylon realize that meaning isn't something given, it's something created. Back at home, you lie in the dark, not afraid, not empty, but full of voices, lanterns, mud-drawn stars, whispered songs, shared meals, and a people who refuse to break in the dark. The stars are still gone, but somehow you're okay with that. The next morning begins slowly. No bells, no shouts, just a warm breeze curling through the alleys and rooftops, brushing dust off windows and waking cats from temple doorsteps. You stretch beneath your reed ceiling, still half expecting a knock, a trumpet, a star returned overnight, but there's no noise, no news, only the soft hum of a city learning how to live inside mystery. You rise anyway. Because now you know something Babylon has taken nearly 2 weeks to understand. You don't need the stars to start your day. At the baker's stall, the loaves are warm again. The price has returned to normal too, which feels like its own little miracle. You share a smile with a stranger in line. Both of you are still glancing up between bites, but less like people waiting for rescue, and more like people visiting a grave. You stroll through the side streets and find more signs of healing. Not hope exactly, but adjustment. A scribe is chiselling a new mural into a wall near the temple district. The city skyline with dozens of tiny human figures holding torches upward into a blank sky. Below it, the words, "We lit our own stars." You pause to admire it, then realise he's not working alone. Children are helping him, passing tools, painting outlines, filling in the spaces between. One girl is adding a goat in the corner. Another boy insists the stars should be different colours this time. Not white, he says. They should be green and gold and red. And no one corrects him. A woman nearby is setting up a stand to sell Inushamti amulets. Clay discs painted with a darkened sky and one faint dot in the centre. For remembering, she says softly, and for patience. You don't buy one. Not because you don't believe, but because you already have your own, that little wax star still tucked under your pillow. You make your way toward the Academy of Scribes, curious to see how the official records are shaping up. Inside, it smells like ink and oil and damp clay. The chief archivist waves you over. He remembers you from the early days when you asked for answers they didn't have. He hands you a fresh tablet. On it, a list of every known disappearance of the stars in Babylon's recorded history. There are only 2 entries. The first is vague, a few lines from generations ago referencing a night without signs. The second, 12 full lines of detail, dates, observations, ritual responses, civic reactions, emotional impacts, even theories. At the bottom, conclusion pending. You raise an eyebrow. The archivist shrugs. We may never know why it happened, but we'll know what we did with it. He gestures toward a nearby chamber filled with tablets. Babylon wrote everything else down, he says. Why not this? Historians still argue whether the silence of the stars fundamentally altered Babylonian astronomy, or if it was a temporary spiritual crisis folded back into tradition. Some scholars claim it made the priests more conservative. Others believe it opened the door to new, more personal forms of worship. What's clear is that something did shift, in the tablets, in the temples, and in the people. You pass through the scholar's garden and pause beneath a fig tree. Amat Shamash is there again, writing. You greet her, and she waves you over. I've been cataloguing the dreams, she says. What dreams? She smiles. They're coming back. You stare. Not every night, she adds. Not like before. But here and there, people are dreaming again. Some of them say they saw the stars. Others say they heard them. Heard? She nods. Like music, or like voices just at the edge of hearing. Nothing clear, just presence. You sit beside her on the bench. Do you think it means they're coming back, you ask? She closes her scroll and looks up at the bright blank sky. I think, she says slowly, we're finally ready if they don't. It's not the answer you hoped for. It's better. That evening, as the sun sets in long gold streaks across the rooftops, you join your neighbours for a small gathering on the plaza. No ritual this time, just dinner, flatbread, lentils, sweet beer. Someone brought pickled turnips. As you eat, someone begins humming. Then a flute joins in, then a hand drum. You lean back on your elbows, full, tired, and surrounded by laughter. For a moment you forget to check the sky, and when you do, it surprises you. How normal it feels not to see anything. The stars may have left, but the people stayed. And in a city built of dust and dreams and the bones of ancient gods, that means everything. You wake again before dawn, not from noise or nightmares, but from the absence of both. It's that soft grey hour when even the pigeons haven't found their voices, and for a moment the whole city of Babylon lies suspended in perfect stillness. You sit up slowly and press your palm to the cool stone floor. There's something comforting about the way the city breathes now, less like a lion roaring for attention, and more like an old ox chewing patiently beneath a fig tree. Outside, the sky is a pale canvas, still refusing to paint itself with stars. But this morning, you don't look up first. You look out, and what you see stirs something quiet inside your ribs. A man sweeping dust from his doorstep, a girl chasing a blue bead that's rolled down a slope, a stray dog lounging in the sun. Life has returned, not loudly, not boldly, but with that stubborn, familiar grace that only humans possess when they've survived something cosmic and inexplicable. You decide to visit the ziggurat again, not for answers, but for the same reason someone returns to the grave of a loved one, to sit, to think, to remember. The climb feels easier today. When you reach the mid-terrace, you see someone has arranged stones into star shapes, imperfect, a little crooked, but unmistakable. You smile. The priest you often see there, yes, the same one who once muttered "mute" like it was a revelation, joins you silently. He sits beside you, legs crossed, robes wrinkled. For a long time, neither of you speak. Then he says, "Do you know what the stars really were before they vanished?" You shake your head. "Hope," he says, "projected upward." You nod. That tracks. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly believed stars were divine beings or merely celestial messengers. But almost all agree they were seen as active. Not passive decorations in the sky, but players in the great game of fate. Their disappearance wasn't just physical, it was existential. It robbed the people of Babylon of something even deeper than knowledge, agency. You and the priest watch the city wake up. A line of servants marches across the bridge carrying baskets of grain. A fishmonger opens his stall and yawns wide enough to frighten small birds. Across the canal, a group of children begins painting stars onto a temple wall using crushed flower petals. They don't even ask permission anymore. No one stops them. The priest chuckles. "We never thought to paint the sky ourselves." "Maybe we weren't supposed to," you say. "Or maybe we always were, and just forgot." You stay like that for a while, listening to the city move. Not because you expect revelation, but because silence now feels less like punishment and more like space. Room to wonder, to grow, to reclaim. Later that day, you find yourself in the Scholars' Quarter again, walking slowly past murals that have transformed since the first week of the event. Where once they depicted orderly star maps and planetary alignments, now they show people, ordinary Babylonians, carrying torches, drawing stars, becoming constellations. A new philosophy is taking shape. You visit a scroll shop run by a stooped man with fingers ink-stained for generations. He shows you a fresh set of writings from a fringe philosopher named Enlil. Her theory, that the disappearance wasn't about gods or omens, but about perspective. "Perhaps the stars haven't gone," her scroll reads. "Perhaps we have simply forgotten how to see them." You ask the shopkeeper what she means by that. He shrugs. "Maybe the gods didn't turn away. Maybe we did. Too many years of expecting answers. Maybe the stars left so we'd start asking better questions." That night, you visit the Canal District, where more sky lanterns are being launched. You help a small boy light his, and as it floats upward he asks, "Do you think the stars are watching us now?" You smile. Maybe they always were. Your neighbour finds you again, now a friend really, and hands you a cup of cool fig wine. "You know what I've been thinking," she says, swirling it lazily. "What if the stars had to go away? just so we could remember what they meant. You nod slowly. Absence makes the sky grow fonder. She laughs, nearly spilling her wine. Exactly. You clink clay cups and sip in silence, and then, just before turning in for the night, you find yourself back on your roof. Not because you're expecting anything, you're done expecting, but because it's a habit now, a comforting one. You lie down, stretch out, close your eyes. And in that quiet moment, with the sky still blank and the city still breathing, you realise something. The stars will return. Maybe not tonight, maybe not ever in the way they once did, but in stories, in dreams, in murals, songs and whispered bedtime tales. They're not really gone, they're just different now, and so are you. You begin to notice something odd in the days that follow, not in the sky, still blank and brooding, but in the conversations around you. People aren't asking when the stars will return anymore. They're asking what it meant that they left. Not just priests or philosophers, everyone. The date sellers, the brick haulers, even the woman who used to scream at pigeons outside the temple of Ishtar. It's as if Babylon has collectively turned from searching outward to searching inward. One evening, you pass a tavern near the artisan district and hear a group arguing over stew and half-empty jugs. Not about taxes, not about trade, about the nature of divine silence. If the gods withdrew the stars, one says, was it to punish us or protect us? Another slaps the table. You still think the gods did it? Maybe the stars left on their own. Or maybe, a younger voice cuts in, we just looked away first and they followed. It's a strange kind of comfort, this shift from fear to curiosity. No longer drowning in dread, the people of Babylon are swimming in questions. You walk on and find yourself drawn to the outer temple gardens, where scribes have begun hanging strips of papyrus from tree branches. Each strip bears a question or a theory, written by anyone willing to contribute. You stop to read a few. Did we take the stars for granted? Did the gods need silence to listen better? Were the stars ever real, or did we dream them into being? Some strips are signed, others anonymous, some are jokes. I bet Marduk misplaced the stars in his laundry basket. Still, they flutter like sacred leaves rustling in the breeze. A priest nearby explains, "This is the tree of unfinished thoughts. We don't answer them, we just let them breathe." Historians still argue whether the rise of this questioning ritual was part of an actual Babylonian tradition or a poetic construct invented later. But records do suggest that during periods of astronomical uncertainty, temples opened special forums for theological debate. What's unique about this moment is its egalitarianism. This was no longer the exclusive domain of priests. Everyone was invited to wrestle with the silence. That night, a public forum is held outside the Temple of Nabu. Not a ritual, just a gathering. A circle of benches, oil lamps, no incense, no robes, just people. You attend. The high priest is there, but he doesn't speak first. Instead, a farmer from the outskirts rises and says, "I used to pray to the stars before planting. Now, I pray to the wind. It listens better." Polite laughter follows. Then a scribe stands. "The stars always told us what was coming, but now I think the silence is asking us what we want to be." Someone murmurs, "That's dangerous." "No," the scribe replies, "that's freedom." You glance around. No one argues. Some nod. Others sit quietly digesting. Then, surprisingly, the high priest rises. The chatter stops instantly. He clears his throat and says, "We have been the interpreters of the sky for generations, and now the sky has gone dark. We can no longer tell you what it means. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's your turn to tell us." The crowd shifts, uncertain. Then someone begins clapping. Slowly. Quietly. But the sound catches. You leave that forum changed. Not because of any grand revelation, but because you realize the city is undergoing something radical. A transfer of spiritual power. Where once the heavens dictated, now the people deliberate. It doesn't stop with forums. Soon, children are asked to draw their own star charts in the temple schools, not of what was, but of what could be. The results are beautiful chaos, stars shaped like birds, dancers, turtles. One child draws a fish with 10 eyes and names it the Watcher of Forgotten Wishes. His teacher weeps and pins it to the wall. In the palace, advisors begin recommending policy decisions without astrological guidance. One even jokes, We used to need Venus for every wedding date. Now we just ask the bride. A radical idea in Babylon. You wander through the market and hear a musician playing a new song. The lyrics go, "The stars went out, and so we lit a fire deep where heartbeats sit." The sky grew quiet. Gods withdrew. So now the gods look just like you. You stop in your tracks. You smile. Because somewhere between fear and faith, Babylon has stumbled into something unexpected. Agency. The stars had always told the people what to expect. Now without them, they've started choosing for themselves. Later that night, you sit on your roof with your friend, no longer just a neighbour. She's sewing star patterns into a shawl. "Do you miss them?" you ask. She doesn't answer right away. "I thought I would," she says, "but now I wonder if I only missed the feeling of being watched." You nod. "And now?" She ties off a knot in the thread. "Now I think I like being the one doing the watching." You look at the sky, still blank, still endless. But something in you shifts. You no longer feel like a passenger, you feel like a navigator. The stars may return, or they may not. But either way, Babylon has changed, and so have you. You wake to a city already in motion, not frantic or chaotic, but quietly determined. Babylon has the air of a people who've stopped waiting for the stars to come back and started learning how to move without them. The ziggurat still casts its long shadow over the city, but now it's joined by new symbols, painted murals on temple walls, clay carvings hanging from doorposts, handmade constellations strung on rooftops. The heavens haven't spoken in days, yet their absence has given birth to more stories than their presence ever did. You cross the bridge over the canal and pause to watch a group of fishermen casting their nets. One of them whistles an old sailing chant that used to be timed to the position of Polaris. Now he just sings it for rhythm, not direction. "We don't need the stars to find the fish," he says when he catches you watching. "They've always been in the same place. We just thought we needed permission." That phrase follows you the rest of the day. "We just thought we needed permission." You stop by the temple library out of habit, unsure whether you're looking for wisdom or just a quiet place to sit. Inside, Amat Shamash is organising scrolls into new categories, not by subject but by tone. Hopeful, questioning, angry, curious, she explains, labelling shelves with pieces of parchment. "We used to sort everything by discipline, now we sort by emotion. It tells a better story of who we are." She hands you a new scroll titled "The Sky Beneath Our Feet." You read the first line. "The gods did not stop speaking. We just forgot they also speak through bread, river water, and the sound of a sleeping city." You look up at her. "You wrote this?" She shrugs. "Part of it. So did a baker, a herder, and a widow who talks in her sleep." You smile. Babylon is writing its own scripture now. Historians still argue whether these people's texts survived beyond oral tradition. Clay fragments with non-standard cuneiform styles suggest a surge of grassroots storytelling around this time, non-priestly, non-official, deeply personal. Many of them describe not stars, but everyday rituals given new meaning, making bread, washing feet, sharing silence. As you walk through the streets, you see these ideas taking root. A mother ties blue thread around her baby's wrist, not for protection from spirits, but to represent an unseen sky that still holds us. A carpenter shapes a doorway lintel into the outline of a constellation, even though he no longer believes in omens. At a tavern, someone's carved a phrase into the bench. "We're made of dust, not stars, but we sparkle just the same." You sit there for a while, sipping sour wine, letting that thought settle into your bones. Later that afternoon, you attend a gathering in the outer courtyard of the Temple of Marduk. You expect another lecture, another carefully worded reassurance. Instead, you find something stranger. The priests have removed their ceremonial robes. They're seated on the ground with everyone else. One of them, an older man you vaguely recognise, speaks first. "We no longer speak on behalf of the gods," he says. "We speak beside you." That sends a ripple through the crowd. He continues, "If the stars return, we will listen, but until then we listen to each other." Someone in the back shouts, "Does this mean the temples are closing?" A younger priest responds, "No, it means they're opening. For stories, not just sacrifice." You sit with that. Stories, not just sacrifice. You begin to notice something strange as the days unfold. Babylon has grown more united in the absence of certainty than it ever was under divine clarity. The old power structures, priests above, commoners below, are bending, not broken, but softer, more porous. People share their dreams again. Not because they expect prophecy, but because they've learned that dreams are worth telling anyway. People offer prayers again, not upward, but outward. To neighbours, to children, to the sick and the lonely. A midwife you know begins collecting star stories from clients after every birth. So each child has a sky of their own, she says, even if the real one is still missing. One night, as you walk home through the quiet side streets, you hear someone playing a flute on a rooftop. It's a wandering tune. No beat, no melody, just notes floating upward like questions. You lean against a wall and listen. Then you realise something you hadn't noticed before. You haven't looked at the actual sky in hours. You glance up. Still nothing. But for the first time in 2 weeks, you don't mind. You realise it's not just that Babylon has learned to live without the stars, it's that Babylon has chosen to. Not out of rebellion, out of resilience. You pass a public wall where someone has scrawled in charcoal, "When the sky turned its face, we turned toward each other." You stop and stare at that for a long time, because it's true. The sky grew silent, but Babylon did not. And in that noisy, messy, deeply human response, something sacred was reborn. You wake to the scent of roasted barley and the distant rhythm of sandals on stone. A familiar sound now, like the heartbeat of a city pacing itself. Babylon is no longer holding its breath. It's breathing again, deeply, slowly, one collective chest rising under the weight of a starless sky. You make your way to the shrine district, where rumours have begun to spread that the priests are trying something new. Not more sacrifices, not chants or hymns, not star maps scratched into clay with shaky hands. Omens from anything. You arrive at the Temple of Enlil and sure enough a crowd has gathered. At the centre, 3 priests in full ceremonial dress kneel before a shallow bronze basin filled with oil. A boy steps forward, drops a small coin into the bowl and everyone leans in. The oil ripples, a shadow forms, then fades. One priest gasps. Another makes a note on a wax tablet. The crowd murmurs. "Did you see it?" "No, what was it?" "I think it looked like a fish, or a flame, or a foot, or a star." That's the thing about omens. You see what you need to see. Historians still argue whether this post-star period marked a turn toward irrational superstition or a creative reinvention of belief. The truth likely lives somewhere in the middle. What is religion, after all, if not organised meaning-making? And when the stars disappeared, when the most trusted signs went mute, the Babylonians didn't abandon interpretation. They simply changed where they looked. You watch as the next man steps forward, an older merchant with a dusty robe and a silver ring. He holds a small clay bird in his palm. The priest nods. "Release it." The man tosses the bird into the air, not to fly, but to fall. The way it lands on the ground matters. Is it face up, tail side, cracked, spinning? There's a pause as everyone stares. It lands still. The priest nods solemnly. The bird has no fear. Whatever that means, the merchant seems relieved. You stay for a while, watching as people bring all kinds of objects. Dyed threads, bits of bone, warm bread, animal teeth, dried figs. Each item dropped or stirred or burned in ritual, each one generating just enough meaning to soothe. You wonder, is this chaos, or is it freedom? You return home through the winding alleys behind the scribe's compound and see a boy drawing a star in the dust with his toe. A girl joins him and draws another. Soon, a cluster of children surrounds the spot, each scribbling shapes, some constellations, some imaginary. "Look," one says, pointing to a crooked triangle, "that one's the stubborn donkey." They giggle, then debate what its powers are. Someone says it grants courage. Another says it makes you grow extra teeth. Someone suggests it's just there to make the other stars feel normal. You smile as you pass. The adults are inventing omens. The children are inventing myths. And somehow, both feel equally valid. Later that day, in the Weavers' Quarter, you attend a gathering that calls itself the Circle of New Sky. There are no priests here, just poets, artisans, 2 elderly farmers, and a woman who claims she once saw a shooting star land. They sit on mats, pass around wine, and take turns telling stories about the first night the stars vanished. Each version is different. One man says he felt a pressure in his chest, like a god stepping on his ribs. A woman says she heard music that stopped mid-note. Someone else says she dreamed she was a star falling through water. You add your own memory, standing by the bridge, breathless, trying to blink stars back into being. The group nods, understanding not your words, but your feeling. At the end, someone asks, "Should we call this a miracle?" There's silence. Then someone else replies, "It doesn't matter what we call it. We're still here." That night, back at home, your friend, the neighbour with the stitched shawl, asks if you want to help with something. You follow her to a small open field behind the shrine district, where a group has gathered with bowls of coloured powder, string, and parchment. "We're making new omens," she says. You laugh. "How do you make an omen?" She grins. "We don't wait for signs anymore. We give the world something to respond to." She tosses a pinch of blue powder into the wind. It drifts, swirls, and settles into the grass. Everyone waits. A child whispers, "That means good luck." And no one disagrees. You spend the evening painting bits of cloth with dots and lines, not to record where the stars were, but to imagine where new ones could be. Some cloths show dragons, rivers, horses, hands. One man paints a cracked clay jar with a single bright dot inside. He calls it the Survivor. As the moonless sky darkens, the group hangs their creations from poles and strings them like lanterns. The cloths flutter in the wind, catching the glow of torches. The sky remains blank, but below it, a constellation of human persistence. You lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling, fingers still stained with red pigment. You trace a star on your palm with your thumb and think, if we never see them again, we'll still remember how they made us feel. And that's enough. Morning comes with a hush. Not the eerie, ominous kind that haunted Babylon in the early days of the disappearance, but a quiet full of potential, like the moment before a potter presses their thumb into fresh clay. You step out onto the street and feel it in the air. Something is building, but not tension, anticipation. You pass the courtyard where temple scribes once chiselled records of stars. They've since turned their chisels to people. A new relief is in progress, still unfinished but unmistakable. Men and women looking not upward but toward each other. A child offering a star to an old man. A group of workers planting torches in the earth. No gods, no thrones, just human beings creating light. The artist, a former priest who left the clergy just last week, nods as you pass. "We've worshipped upward long enough," he says. "Now we're building sideways." You keep walking. In the main plaza, a curious sight greets you. The temple council has gathered, but not in secret, and not in solemn robes. They stand barefoot, in plain linen, forming a circle around a single unlit torch. The high priestess steps forward and speaks. "We have fasted. We have prayed. We have listened for the stars." A long pause. "And now we speak to one another." She bends low and lights the torch, not with fire from the temple, but from a lantern carried in by a child. The message is clear. The divine has moved homes, from the heavens into the hands of the people. The torch is passed from one to another, each person whispering something as they take it. A blessing, a promise, a secret. No one knows, but everyone respects the silence. When the torch reaches the final priest, he holds it aloft and says, "If the stars no longer speak for us, then we must speak for them." Somewhere in the crowd, someone claps. It spreads. Not in thunderous applause, but in slow, rhythmic beats, a human heartbeat. Later you find yourself standing beneath the gate of Ishtar, once a symbol of celestial protection, now transformed. Someone has hung a banner between the two towers. "We are the omen now." Below it, children are handing out papyrus scrolls. Not orders, not prophecies, but questions, written in simple Akkadian script. What do you want to become? What do you hope your children remember? If you were a star, where would you shine? You take one. You don't answer right away. That evening, something remarkable happens. Not in the sky, in the city. At dusk, Babylon stops. Not because of fear, but because of choice. All around you, shops close early. Workers lay down their tools. Priests extinguish their lamps. Not because of an order, but because of a whisper. Tonight we pause, together. You gather at the riverbank along with thousands of others. No one speaks. You sit shoulder to shoulder, like pages in a book not yet written. And then you wait. Not for stars, not for signs, but for presence. The river gurgles softly. A baby cries and is hushed by a lullaby. The wind stirs a clay wind chime on a fisherman's hut. It's not silence. It's music with the instruments missing, and it's perfect. Somewhere behind you, someone strikes a drum. Once, then waits, then again. Others join in, claps, stomps. The beat begins to build, not fast, not loud, but steady. Babylon pulses. A woman begins to hum. You recognize the tune. It was sung on the first starless night. It's slower now, gentler, tired maybe, but still strong. People begin to sing. Others hum. A flute appears. A harp. Someone turns their water jug into a drum. There are no stars above, but the ground glows. Oil lamps, torches, painted lanterns swinging from strings, 1,000 flickers against the black night. And then, just for a moment, someone gasps. You turn your head. High above, near the eastern edge of the sky, something faint, a pinprick, a dot. You blink. You hold your breath. It's there. One, just one. Barely more than a suggestion, but real. A star. Someone begins crying. Not loudly, not with panic, with relief, with joy. Others don't see it. Some squint and shake their heads. Some call it imagination, but it doesn't matter. Because even the idea that it might be real is enough. That night, no one sleeps. Because that night, hope becomes more than ritual. It becomes evidence. You don't remember falling asleep, only waking up on the riverbank with dew on your robe and the faint ache of stone beneath your back. Around you, others stir slowly, blinking under the weight of what may have been a dream, or maybe more. The moment you sit up, your eyes go skyward. Still blank, the single glimmer you saw last night, gone, if it was ever there. But somehow, it doesn't hurt. You expected disappointment, maybe even anger, but what you feel is something gentler, acceptance. The kind that doesn't mean giving up, just letting go. Around you, Babylon rises with the dawn. People stretch, yawn, share dried figs and sleepy nods. No one seems frantic. No one cries. In fact, someone near you chuckles and says, "Typical gods, just enough of a sparkle to keep us guessing." And that's the energy now, not grief, not urgency, curiosity. Was it a true star? A trick of the eye? An ember from a lantern drifting too high? Historians still argue whether anyone truly saw a star that night. Some records describe a small light above the eastern gate. Others call it a mass hallucination born from exhaustion and hope. There is no consensus, and that's what makes it perfect. Because now Babylon has learned to live inside the question, not the answer. You walk back toward the city proper, and everything feels changed. Subtly, quietly, but absolutely. The temple bells ring again, but not for sacrifice or royal decree. They toll once, and once only, marking the end of something. Not an era. A silence. You visit Amat Shamash that afternoon. She's in the courtyard copying scrolls with a group of young students. They aren't working on astronomy charts anymore. They're writing poems. You pick one up at random. It reads, "The stars are shy, or maybe wise. They left to let us find our eyes." You read it twice. Then you sit. Amat smiles as she hands you a wax tablet. "Go on," she says. "Add your voice." You don't write right away. You listen to the children's soft voices as they brainstorm metaphors. One compares the missing stars to a mother playing hide-and-seek. Another calls them seeds, buried so deep we forgot to water them. Eventually you write, "We lit lamps when the sky went blank. Turns out we were always holding matches. You're not a poet." But in this new Babylon, it doesn't matter. You're a witness. That's enough. Later, you pass through the bazaar and realise the sky is no longer the main topic of conversation. It's drifted to the background like a long, unsolved riddle that everyone's content to leave unfinished. The potter talks about a new kiln technique. The butcher complains about goat prices. The gossip at the well isn't about the gods. It's about someone sneaking kisses behind the temple of Nergal. Life has returned. Not in spite of the mystery, but with it. That evening you climb the ziggurat one last time, not for answers, just to sit in the breeze and watch the lamps twinkle across the city like fallen stars. A priest joins you, the same one who called the sky mute 2 weeks ago. He doesn't speak for a long time. Then he says, "I used to think the gods shouted. Now I think they whisper, or sometimes they just wait." You nod. He smiles faintly and adds, "Or maybe they're letting us take the next line in the story." You look up at the blank sky. Still no stars, but beneath it, Babylon glows. In lanterns, songs, chalk constellations on stone walls, in the shared gaze of neighbours, in the hands of children building futures no prophecy can predict, and in you, the silence that once felt like abandonment now feels like permission, to wonder, to speak, to create. The sky hasn't changed, but you have, and maybe that's the real miracle. You don't rise early the next morning, not because you're tired, but because there's no longer the compulsion to check the sky first thing. It's amazing how quickly even the most unsettling silence can become a companion. When you finally do stir, it's to the gentle sound of weaving looms and a rooster crowing 2 courtyards over. You stretch, dress, and for the first time in days, take your time. Today feels like a bridge between what Babylon was and whatever it's quietly becoming. You wander through the scholars' district, half hoping to see someone argue about celestial calculations again. Instead, you find a woman painting a mural on the side of a scroll house. Not stars this time, not gods, just people, laughing, planting, sitting under trees. Above them, a sky not full of light but colour, swirls of red and blue, gold leaf pressed into whorls, a kind of kaleidoscopic sky that seems to say, "We imagined this, and that is enough." She sees you staring. "I figured," she says with a smirk, "if we're going to make up the heavens, they might as well be beautiful." You nod. They always were. "But now," she adds, "they're ours." You continue on, eventually arriving at a small amphitheatre near the western wall. It's mostly used for recitations and impromptu debates, but today it's filled with citizens passing around a single clay tablet. On it, a new proposal, a festival. Not to worship the stars, but to commemorate their silence. A young priest reads aloud, "Let there be a night without rituals, only lanterns. Let each person tell a story. Let there be no temple walls, only open spaces. Let it be called the night the sky listened." You can feel the crowd shift. Some are unsure. Others lean forward. A woman stands. "We should make cakes shaped like stars, empty centres, honey inside." Someone else adds, "And let children wear painted cloaks. Let them be the constellations." The crowd begins to buzz. What was once fear has become festival. Historians still argue whether the night the sky listened was ever formalised. Some tablets reference a festival where stars were painted in ash and songs were sung without words. Whether these came from this very moment or were imagined later is impossible to know, but what matters is how the event feels. Like a new myth being born, not from power, but from participation. That night, you sit beside your friend again, watching a group of children rehearse a play they made up on their own. It's called When the Stars Got Lost. There's a boy dressed as the moon who carries a satchel of invisible light. There's a girl who plays a priest who forgets how to pray. And a chorus of children chanting nonsense phrases that somehow feel like ancient wisdom. The sky went quiet, so we grew loud. We built a fire and fed it proud. You laugh, you cry, you applaud. After the show, the children hand out pieces of clay, each marked with a different shape. "Make your own constellation," one says. "Give it a story." You sit with your friend and shape a crooked line with 3 dots at the ends. "What's this one?" she asks. You smile. "It's called the Lantern Carriers. They don't know where they're going, but they go anyway." She presses hers beside yours. "Mine's the listening bowl. It catches all the wishes people whisper when they think no one's listening." You both pause and look up. The sky's still blank, but neither of you feels small beneath it anymore. You walk home slowly, passing homes lit from within. At one house, a family is gathered around a painted star map on the floor. They're arguing over which imaginary star gets to be the luckiest. At another, someone has placed offerings not on an altar, but in the window, so the sky can see us if it decides to peek back. You hear music, always music now, not formal hymns. Formal, street songs, lullabies, dances in sandals and clapping hands. Babylon doesn't mourn in silence anymore. It mourns in motion. Back in your home, you pull out your wax star from beneath the bed. You place it on your windowsill, not as a beacon, as a thank you. Then you lie on your mat and close your eyes. Your last thought before sleep isn't whether the stars will return. It's whether, in some quiet corner of the cosmos, they're watching. Not as gods, but as old friends. You awaken in the middle of the night. No sound stirred you. No dream yanked you from sleep. You simply wake. It's the kind of moment that feels given, not caused. A breath you didn't know you needed. The city lies still outside your window, not dead, just resting in the deep hum of sleep that even mighty Babylon must surrender to. You sit up and pull on your robe, then climb to the rooftop without really knowing why. Habit, maybe. Hope. Or just the soft magnetism of the sky, even when it's blank. You arrive at the top and pause. At first you think it's your imagination again, a trick of sleeplessness, a glint from someone's lantern down the street. But no, there it is. A single point of light, far to the west, barely more than a whisper. You rub your eyes. It doesn't go away, you don't speak, you don't move, you just stare, holding your breath as though the slightest exhale might send it flickering back into absence. But it stays, a lone star, not a skyfall, not a cascade, just one. And somehow that's more powerful than 1,000 ever could have been. You sit down slowly, as though in reverence, and rest your hands on your knees. For the longest time, you don't do anything but watch it hang there, unwavering, in a sky that had forgotten how to answer. Eventually your friend appears beside you, wordless, drawn by the same invisible thread. She sees it too. Her eyes go wide, then soft, and then she laughs. Not loud, not manic, just a single note of joy that spreads through her shoulders like sunrise. You see it? You whisper. She nods. I don't care if it's real, she says. I'm keeping it. You smile. Maybe it's the same one from the other night. She shrugs. Or maybe it's new. She leans her head on your shoulder and you sit together in silence. Two people, one star, infinite meaning. The sky doesn't flood open. No constellation rejoins the heavens. But this small light, this quiet, stubborn star is enough. And it does something extraordinary. It doesn't disappear, not in 5 minutes, not in 10, not after you close your eyes and open them again. It stays. You don't call for others, you don't run through the streets or bang on doors, because this moment isn't for spectacle, it's for witnessing. And when the first colour of dawn begins to bleed across the horizon, the star doesn't fade. Not right away. It lingers, as if to say, I never left. You just had to learn to see me differently. You finally rise, limbs stiff, heart full. The city begins to stir around you. The rooster cries. A cart rumbles over cobblestone. Somewhere someone spills water and curses softly. But you still feel wrapped in something sacred. You make your way down to the street, and already rumours ripple from neighbour to neighbour. Did you see it? I think it was real this time. No, my brother said it was a god returning. My cousin said it was just Venus. You pass them all with a quiet smile. Let them debate. Let them theorize. The truth doesn't need to be agreed upon to be felt. You arrive at the temple district just as the high priestess emerges from the sanctuary, her arms bare, her face lined but radiant. Someone asks her directly, was it a sign? She doesn't answer right away. Then she says simply, it was a beginning. Not a return. A beginning. You continue your walk, and as you pass a wall still wet with fresh paint, you see a new message scrawled in large letters. The sky blinked, and we blinked back. That's it. No hymn, no oracle, just that. And it's perfect. The rest of the day unfolds gently. Merchants don't shout as much. Priests smile more easily. Children keep glancing up like they're playing hide-and-seek with the stars. You find yourself helping your friend hang a lantern above her doorway. When she lights it, she doesn't say a prayer. She just hums. And when the first true night since that tiny spark begins to fall, you go up to the roof again. Not in expectation, but in gratitude. The sky is still mostly dark, but now you understand something you didn't before. It's allowed to be, and so are you. Whether the stars return or not, you know what to do with the darkness. You light your own. The final night begins quietly. You stand once more on the rooftop that has, over these many nights, become less a perch for watching and more a sanctuary. The city below glows not with prophecy or panic, but with people simply being. You can hear laughter down the alley, music from someone's reed flute, the gentle splash of water being carried home. You tilt your head up. The sky is again a canvas of black. And that's okay. Because now you don't wait with fear. You don't scan for signs or count pinpricks of light to soothe your uncertainty. You simply sit, you breathe, and then something shifts, not in the heavens but in you. You feel it. A deep calm not tied to any star's return or priest's ritual. A knowing. Babylon has moved on. not by forgetting the stars, but by learning to live without needing them to speak first. The temples still stand, of course, but now their doors are open wide, no longer reserved for holy elites. Children run through them. Artists paint the walls with new myths. The gods are still honoured, but with questions now, not just chants. Wonder has taken the place of fear. You pass the old astrologer's tower the next morning and find the Chaldean priests have repurposed it into a school. Not for omens, but for ideas. They teach writing, numbers, wind patterns and stories. One section of the stone wall is now a giant chalkboard where anyone can scrawl a message or a thought. You watch as someone writes, "Even if the stars are silent, we are not." That afternoon, the high priestess herself comes to speak at the plaza. There is no robe, no scepter, just her voice. "We asked the sky for answers," she says, "and when it didn't answer, we learned to speak for ourselves." No one applauds, no one shouts, but everyone hears her. Later, as the sun sinks low, you walk the old path along the Euphrates, where you once saw priests toss sacred herbs into the water. You see a young boy, maybe 6, skipping stones. He sees you watching and grins. "I threw my star into the river," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "Why?" "So it would float all the way around the world." He nods like it's the most obvious thing ever. Maybe someone else needs it more now. And just like that, your heart aches, not with sadness, but with something brighter, like the warmth of fire after a long cold walk. That night, as the wind picks up and the lanterns sway softly on every balcony, you sit on your rooftop for the final time. The stars don't return, and somehow you don't expect them to, because they were never really what you were looking for. You were looking for meaning, for connection, for something to remind you that you're part of something bigger, even if that something is just a city of other people also trying to make sense of things. And you found it, in flickering oil lamps, in chalk constellations drawn by children, in whispered prayers spoken without needing an answer, in the warmth of a hand on your shoulder. The heavens may have darkened. But Babylon? Babylon now shines, and as you close your eyes for the final time in this long story, the last thing you hear is not the hush of absence, but the hum of presence, of life, of people, of you. And now, as your breath softens and your body settles into stillness, let the echoes of ancient Babylon fade gently into the quiet of your room. You've travelled far tonight, from the towering ziggurats and shadowed temples to silent rooftops under a starless sky. You've watched a city unravel and reweave itself, not by returning to what it once was, but by becoming something entirely new. It's okay now to let go of the story. You don't need to hold on to every name or every detail. Just carry the feeling, the way Babylon learned to glow in the dark, the way the silence of the heavens became a canvas for human light. Let that feeling cradle you now. Inhale slowly, like drawing in the warmth of a distant lamp. Exhale, like releasing a question you no longer need answered. There is no need for certainty here, no stars to interpret, no omens to decode. Just the rhythm of your breath, the softness of your bed, and the knowledge that even when the sky goes quiet, you're never truly alone. Let your thoughts drift like the slow current of the Euphrates. Let the music of the city's new heartbeat lull you deeper. And as sleep approaches, gentle and steady, imagine that single star, faint but unwavering, hanging in the sky not above Babylon, but above you, watching, waiting, whispering nothing at all, and somehow saying everything. Good night, traveller. Sleep well. 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 Hey guys, tonight we're not staying in some haunted Victorian house or hiking into an abandoned Cold War bunker. Nope. Tonight, we're going somewhere quieter. Too quiet, really. You're about to step into the stillness of a 12th century Korean forest monastery. No electricity, no warm showers, no late-night snacks. Just the sound of your breath, the rustle of wind through pines, and a bell that tolls long before dawn. You're not going to like it. The monks here train in silence, live in stillness, and eat with more discipline than you've ever seen in your life. You, with your phone in your hand and half a coffee still in your system, are about to find out what it means to really disconnect. You probably won't survive this night, but if you do, something in you might change. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a pine forest. The sun's nearly down, just a dull smear of orange behind the black ridge of trees. The air smells like damp moss and wood smoke. No roads, no carts, no sound but the wind threading through branches and a crow with strong opinions in the distance. Your feet crunch on gravel as you follow the narrow path inward. It's barely more than 2 feet wide, overgrown and soft underfoot, and you're pretty sure no one's swept it in centuries. The forest gets thicker. Pines tower overhead like judges in robes, their bark blackened with age. There's something deeply indifferent about these trees, as if they've seen thousands come and go, and you're just another passing breath. You finally see it. A tall wooden gate with no lock, no guard, just 2 weathered beams etched with Chinese characters, half faded with rain and time. The sign reads, "Enter empty." Not helpful, not comforting, just cryptic. You duck under the lintel and enter the temple grounds. It's not what you expect. No grand buildings or painted dragons, just a scattering of low wooden halls, each with grey tiled roofs that slope like tired shoulders. The walls are simple timber and mud plaster, with a few torn rice paper windows fluttering in the wind. Stone lanterns dot the courtyard, unlit. A small bell tower leans slightly to one side like it's been bowing for 500 years. A novice monk appears silently, barefoot, face blank. He bows deeply, then gestures for you to follow. You try to ask where your room is, but he just keeps walking. Talking is off the menu now, apparently. You follow him down a side corridor. The floor creaks. Spiders live here. Many. One dangles by a single thread as you pass, probably judging you. At a small side hall, he slides open a rice paper door. Inside is a 6x6 foot cubicle, with a thin straw mat, a folded blanket, and nothing else. No chair, no candles, no window. Just one hook on the wall for your robe. You turn to ask a question, but the novice has already vanished. There's a dull dong in the distance, the bell. You step outside again and realize the entire monastery is already moving. Monks in grey robes shuffle across the courtyard, heads bowed, hands tucked into sleeves. Not one is talking. Not one glances your way. It's like watching a silent river made of human intention. They form rows under a massive pine and bow deeply. Then again. Kneeling, standing, palms up, palms together, bowing until your knees cry for mercy and your lower back writes a resignation letter. Here's your first fun historical fact. Korean Seon Buddhism, related to Japanese Zen, developed in part as a reaction to the elaborate rituals of earlier schools. These monks aren't here for incense and gold statues. They're here to break themselves open with silence, breath, and physical repetition. And here's a weird tidbit. During the Goryeo period, it wasn't uncommon for aristocrats to temporarily enter monasteries to purify karma, often after a political blunder. Yep, royal screw-ups were followed by mandatory spiritual retreats. Think of it as medieval crisis management. Historians still argue whether the most remote temples, like the one you're in, were ever truly meant for outsiders. Some believe these hidden monasteries were deliberately unwelcoming, isolated for the sake of intensity. Others argue they were open sanctuaries, a last refuge for those seeking real change. Either way, you're in deep now. You bow. Again. As the sky turns purple-black, the cold settles in. It's the kind that seeps up through your socks and into your bones. You wonder if you'll be offered dinner, or if enlightenment is supposed to make you forget you're hungry. Another bell rings. The monks rise and file silently toward a low hall with paper doors. You follow. Inside, candlelight flickers dimly. You're handed a wooden bowl and a spoon, no tray, no options. You sit cross-legged on a mat as a pot of rice gruel is passed down the line. No one speaks. No one chews loudly. One guy, 2 spots down, makes a slurping sound and gets the kind of side-eye that could fossilize a squirrel. You try to eat slowly, mindfully, like everyone else. But it tastes like boiled dust. Just rice, water, and maybe regret. Your stomach wants to rebel. Your mouth misses salt. A single monk at the front claps twice. Everyone freezes. Then, in eerie unison, They all lift their bowls and give a brief whispered chant. Something about gratitude and non-attachment. You pretend to mumble along. Good luck with that. Afterward, the bowls are rinsed by you. No kitchen staff. Everyone scrubs their own dish in icy water from a wooden basin. You try not to drop yours. There are no replacements. As you step outside, the stars are out. There's no moon, just a billion points of cold fire above the trees. The forest groans faintly in the wind, and for a moment, you wonder if you made a huge mistake. Then again, you're here now. You're not sure what time it is, but time doesn't really matter here. Time doesn't tick. It flows like incense smoke, slow, looping, and kind of impossible to follow. What matters is rhythm, and the rhythm just shifted. A senior monk gestures at you from across the courtyard. He's old, cloaked in the same ash-grey robe as the rest, but there's something regal in the way he moves, deliberate, like each step has consequences. He doesn't speak, but his expression is very clear. You're not done. You follow him, bare feet brushing gravel, into a narrow hallway that smells faintly of cedar and boiled turnips. At the end is a small room, barely bigger than a closet, with cubby holes on the wall. He points to your boots and your sack of belongings. They go in the cubby. All of it. Even your little cloth-wrapped snack from the village, especially that. Then he nods toward a folded robe on a shelf. You're expected to change. So, you do. The robe is coarse, scratchy, and the colour of wet stone. It smells like vinegar and incense and somehow memory. It fits badly, as if tailored for someone slightly more ascetic than you. And suddenly you look like them, at least from the neck down. You walk back into the corridor, now barefoot and bareheaded, and the temperature hits differently. The floor feels alive. Every creak, every cold patch of tile, every whisper of your own movement suddenly matters. This is your first true lesson here. You're not supposed to be comfortable, and not just physically. Your ego's already kicking and screaming. No phone, no status, no cool shoes or hey guys smile. Just you, your breath, and the awkward weight of trying not to exist too loudly. You trail the elder monk into another wing of the temple, this one darker, older, almost leaning with age. It smells like wax and damp parchment. You glance up and see faded murals of bodhisattvas, their faces serene, their eyes half-lidded like they know something you don't, which, spoiler alert, they absolutely do. He gestures again, and you enter a small chamber, 8 mats arranged in a square, all already occupied. The monks are sitting zazen, back straight, legs folded into lotus or half-lotus, hands resting in their laps like fragile birds. You sit on the only empty mat, or at least you try. Folding your legs this way is not natural. Your hip protests, your knee gives a little warning pop, and your back is already regretting your life choices. You look around, hoping someone else is struggling. Nope. They are statues. Breathing statues. Then, the bell. A single, soft chime. Not a gong this time. This bell is smaller, suspended on a thread of silence, and it lands in your ears like a snowflake. No one moves. You're supposed to follow your breath now. Inhale, exhale. That's it. No thinking, no analysing. No wondering if anyone liked your last Instagram post from 3 days ago that now feels like it happened in another life. Here's a historical anchor for you. This type of meditation, Sion, is based on direct insight into the nature of the mind. It isn't about chanting, reciting sutras, or visualizing deities, just sitting, just breathing, just being. Think of it as extreme mental minimalism, invented centuries before Silicon Valley tried to sell you mindfulness apps. And here's your quirky tidbit of the hour. In some Korean temples, monks practiced a ritual called jiwa, where they'd walk silently behind meditating novices and slap them with a flat stick. Not out of punishment, but to awaken them from drowsiness. You're lucky tonight's crew seems more gentle, for now. Historians still argue whether Sion practice in the 1100s was as rigorous as its later documented forms. Some say it was already strict and silent. Others suggest it was a bit more flexible, especially in mountain temples where survival sometimes outranked doctrine. But in this monastery, tucked deep in the pines, discipline is non-negotiable. After what feels like an hour, but might be 20 minutes, a senior monk slowly rises. He walks a slow circuit behind the group. His sandals whisper across the wooden floor. He stops behind someone, lightly adjusts their posture, then moves on. You hold your breath as he nears you. He pauses. Uh-oh. A gentle tap on your shoulder. Your spine straightens like a scared cat. He moves on. You have now been silently corrected. Welcome to monastery life. After the session ends, signalled by another soft bell, the monks bow in unison. You try to follow, but your legs are asleep and you collapse sideways like a bag of rice. No one laughs, which almost makes it worse. You hobble out into the night air, legs jelly, brain buzzing. This place strips you down. Not violently, but persistently. Gently, like water-shaping stone. It's not trying to impress you, it's trying to erase you. You head toward the outer courtyard where a few monks are gathered. No one speaks, of course. They just stand, hands tucked, eyes up toward the dark sky where stars are starting to punch through the velvet. You realise this is the closest thing they have to entertainment. A breeze brushes the pine needles overhead, and they hiss like rain. Then you see it. A shooting star. Quick. Bright. Gone. No one gasps, no one points. They just continue breathing. You start to feel smaller, but in a good way. Like maybe being a speck isn't the worst thing. Still, you're exhausted. Another novice finds you and bows. You bow back, probably too deeply, but enthusiasm counts for something, right? He leads you back to your bare little room. The floor's still cold, the mat's still thin, but it's yours, or at least it's where you'll try to sleep. You lie down in silence. No pillows, no ambient playlist, just wind, wood creaks, and your heartbeat. And the creeping realization you've only just begun. You wake up confused, because technically you never really fell asleep. At best, you entered a kind of semi-conscious paralysis. Your body motionless on the straw mat, your mind bouncing between strange dreams of chanting statues and bottomless teacups. And then, just as you thought you were drifting off for real, gong. One hit. Deep. Long. It echoes through the wooden beams and into your bones. You open your eyes, but everything's still dark. Not early morning. Not even late night. This is a time of day so unnatural, it doesn't belong to anyone. You check your non-existent watch. Of course, you have no watch. You gave that up yesterday. Well, a few hours ago. Time is now measured in bells and aching joints. You stumble upright, brush off straw, and fumble into your robe. Outside, the night air slaps you awake. Cold and sharp, like the forest is actively judging you for thinking sleep was part of the plan. A few shadowy figures drift silently through the courtyard, monks moving like ghosts across gravel. You follow, bleary-eyed, through the side gate and down a long stone path lit only by moonlight, and a single lantern swinging in the wind. Your feet are bare again. You forgot slippers were optional, but the gravel isn't. Every step reminds you of your soft city upbringing. The group stops outside a small meditation hall. You enter last. There are no candles, just pale moonlight through paper windows. The room smells like pine resin and human breath. No one speaks. No one yawns. They just sit, instantly, effortlessly, like breathing statues. You try to mimic them, again folding your legs, again failing to look serene. But hey, you're upright. Progress. This is the midnight meditation. Technically, it's called midnight meditation, but it's closer to 1:30 a.m. The goal? To train your mind when your body wants nothing more than to shut down, to sit in stillness when everything biological is begging for sleep. You're supposed to count your breaths, not out loud, just silently, with laser focus. 1, 2, 3. By 15, your thoughts drift to cheeseburgers. Here's a historical tidbit to ground you. Buddhist monks in 12th century Korea often followed the Yebel and Chamseon disciplines, prescribed cycles of chanting and meditation, including night sittings that began in total darkness. These weren't optional spiritual extras. These were daily requirements. Miss 1, that's a silent shaming. 2, you might be asked to leave, or at least reconsider your life as a future Buddha. Quirky side note. Some monasteries, especially those up in the colder mountains, used icicle formations in water basins as rough timekeepers during night sessions. Once it was light enough to see the reflection of your own nose in the water, that was dawn. Sort of beautiful, sort of horrifying. Historians still debate how strictly these schedules were enforced during the Goryeo dynasty. Some argue that spiritual rigour was softened at smaller temples, especially during winter months. Others believe the schedule never changed. because the path to enlightenment doesn't care if you have seasonal depression. You try again to count your breath, but the silence is so loud. Your ears pick up everything. Someone's stomach growling 2 mats away, a foot shifting on the wood, the wind whispering through a cracked panel. You realize that peaceful is not what you're experiencing. This silence is aggressive. It doesn't soothe you, it presses on you, like an invisible weight across your chest. You try closing your eyes tighter. Bad idea. Now you feel like you're falling, floating. You snap them open. Still here, still grounded. Probably. Then comes the real challenge. Your mind starts talking, loudly. Why are you here? What are you trying to prove? You paid how much to sleep on a mat and be judged by a guy who hasn't blinked in 2 days? You breathe in. You breathe out. Still not Buddha. Another monk shifts. You seize the opportunity to stretch your back slightly. Subtle enough to avoid scandal, you hope. The session continues in that same suspended nothingness. You lose track of time, breath, and possibly sanity. But there's also something strange happening. Between bouts of mental rebellion and leg cramps, there's a flicker, just a flicker, of quiet. Not around you, in you, like your brain stopped yelling for 1 precious second. Then it starts again, of course, complaining about your hip and asking if lunch is ever coming. But still, that second happened, and that's a big deal here. The bell rings again, soft, final, no applause, no relief. Just slow movement as everyone bows and stands. You follow suit. And this time, you don't fall over. Outside, the night has shifted. The stars are fainter, and there's a pale blue smear at the horizon. Technically still night. Spiritually, morning has started. No one says anything as you file back toward the main hall. But the rhythm is stronger now. You're falling into it, a little. Like your body is learning a new dance it didn't agree to but can't help remembering. Back in your room, you lie down again. Not to sleep, but to wait for the next bell. You wrap the thin blanket over your legs. You listen to the wind. You try to stay still. This time, you almost do. The next bell comes gently, almost mercifully. A single tone, just as the sky begins to lighten into a soft steel grey. You haven't really slept again, but your body has at least stopped fighting. It's given up, surrendered. You're officially a monk now, if only by exhaustion. You rise slowly. Your legs creak like old floorboards, and your neck crackles as you tilt your head side to side. You try not to groan. This is, after all, a place where sound is sacred and should only be used for bells, chants, or intense internal suffering. The other monks are already moving. No one runs, no one rushes. They walk with that eerie, fluid stillness, like they know there's no point in hurrying toward enlightenment. You follow them across the courtyard, where the grass is tipped in frost. The air smells like wet pine needles and yesterday's breath. The hall you're heading to is low and wide, with an open front and a wooden floor rubbed smooth by centuries of footsteps. Inside, the mats are already laid out. You sit cross-legged. There is a brief moment of pause, then the food comes. Breakfast. It's barley again. This time with a thin miso broth and 3 pickled vegetables, one of which smells like fermented regret. You eat it in silence, eyes down, trying not to react to the salt slap of that first crunchy bite. The monks eat without emotion, spooning food into their mouths with the detachment of philosophers. You do your best imitation of someone whose taste buds have been spiritually silenced. And here's where it gets interesting. Each bowl has to be cleaned with food. That's right. You pour hot water into your rice bowl, swish the last grains around, drink it like soup, then wipe the bowl clean with a slice of pickled radish. You eat the radish. Why? Because nothing is wasted. Not even the water. It's called balbugongyang, and it's been practiced for over 1,000 years. This isn't just eating. This is a ritual of gratitude and awareness. Even the leftovers have a purpose. Even the bitterest flavors deserve a bow. Fun fact. The original Korean Seon monks adopted this frugal, intentional eating style to combat the rising excess of temple culture during the late unified Silla and early Goryeo periods. Too many lavish feasts, too much drama with rich patrons. So the forest monks rebelled, with plain gruel and militant humility. And for your quirky tidbit, some strict monasteries believed that even the sound of your eating could reveal your state of mind. A loud slurp meant spiritual chaos. a gentle chew, inner clarity. You chewing that rubbery root vegetable like it owes you money? Not enlightened. Historians still debate whether all temples followed these strict dining rituals, or if some, particularly those in coastal regions, were a bit more relaxed. Fishing villages tended to have a looser interpretation of detachment from worldly pleasures, especially when mackerel was in season. After breakfast, it's time for work. You don't get a nap, you don't get reflection time, you get a broom, a handmade one. The bristles are long and uneven, tied with hemp string, and it's already been used for at least a decade. You're not sure if it's more brush or artifact. Your task? Sweep the stone steps leading to the upper pagoda. At first, you think, oh, sweeping, that's easy. You poor naive creature. You quickly discover that these stairs are not flat. They're ancient, uneven, covered in moss, and there are roughly 100 of them. Also, the broom is ceremonial in its effectiveness. It mostly just pushes dust around like a whispery suggestion. Still, you sweep and sweep. The handle digs into your palms, your robe keeps slipping off one shoulder, the wind won't cooperate. A squirrel throws a pine cone at you from above. You sweep anyway. It's not about cleaning, of course. It's about being present. With each stroke, you're meant to observe your thoughts, your breath, your body. You're not removing dust from stone. You're removing attachment from the mind. Or at least that's what you try to tell yourself while shivering. Nearby, another monk rakes gravel into perfectly symmetrical lines. Every movement is exact. Every curve is intentional. The design is gone by morning, of course, but it doesn't matter. Impermanence is part of the deal. You glance at your crooked broom lines. They look like someone tried to draw enlightenment while sneezing. You keep going. Eventually, a novice comes to retrieve you. No words, just a small bow. You follow, broom in hand, arms buzzing from the work. You're led to the washing basin, an outdoor stone trough filled with icy spring water. Time to rinse the broom, and your face, and your hands, and possibly your sins. You splash your face and it's like getting slapped by a snowstorm. Your skin tightens, your breath catches. You suddenly feel more awake than you ever have in your life. Maybe this is the real morning coffee. As you dry your face with the sleeve of your robe, you realize something. No one has asked you anything today. Not your name, not your thoughts, not how you slept. You haven't spoken a single word since yesterday, and yet, somehow, you are entirely seen. This place has no need for small talk, it has no need for your stories. It looks through them, past them, into something quieter. The cold wind rises again. The pine trees whisper overhead. You look up and, for the first time, you don't feel the need to fill the silence with anything, not even your thoughts. You head back toward the main hall, damp sleeves sticking to your arms, broom still in hand like some medieval badge of humility. A line of monks glides past you. None look up, none smile. You're still the outsider here, robe or not, but now at least you're an outsider with blistered palms and barley breath. A novice collects the broom with a respectful nod and disappears, like everyone here does. Quietly, and usually before you can ask a single question. You take a few tentative steps toward your room, but another monk appears. He gestures with a tilt of his head toward yet another hall. You follow. Resistance feels pointless now. This building is different, smaller, darker. The door is barely 5 feet high, so you stoop. Inside, there's nothing but a long hallway of paper walls, each hiding a monk's cell, and now it's your turn. He slides one door open. It's just like the first cell you saw, but with something new. A thin cushion for sitting, and a worn book made of folded rice paper, resting on a tiny wooden desk. No chairs, of course, just the cushion and you. The monk bows and leaves. You kneel. The cushion sighs under you. The book is handwritten, black ink on fading yellow. The characters are unfamiliar but beautiful. You're not expected to read them. You're expected to copy them. There's a blank scroll beside it, a brush, a pot of ink. This is your practice now. You dip the brush in ink and make your first stroke. It's terrible, wobbly, too thick. The brush skips. The paper warps slightly. You stare at it with regret. The next stroke is worse. The third looks like a confused tree. You have no idea what you're writing, but that's not the point. This isn't calligraphy. This is transcription meditation, and it was a cornerstone of many Goryeo-era monasteries. To copy a sutra is to imprint the teaching onto the body through the hand. You're not learning about Buddhism, you're living it, one shaky brushstroke at a time. Quirky little fact. Monks in this era sometimes believed that even a poorly written sutra still had merit, as long as it was done with sincerity. Some even requested to be buried with the scrolls they copied themselves, like a kind of karmic receipt. Historians still argue whether this ritual was purely spiritual, or if it also served a more pragmatic function, replicating texts in a world before printing presses. Some scholars suggest that low-ranking monks were often assigned to transcription, not for enlightenment, but because the temple needed spare copies of the Diamond Sutra. You, however, are definitely not here for publishing. After an hour, maybe more, you realise you've only copied a single line. Your back is sore, your fingers are smudged with ink, you've lost count of how many times you accidentally sighed out loud. The silence makes every sound feel personal. The scratch of your sleeve, the gentle clack of the brush against the pot, even your breath seems louder than it should be. You pause, you breathe, you dip the brush again, another stroke, and another. At some point you forget what the strokes even mean. Your body moves, but your mind softens. It's not blank exactly, more like suspended. You're no longer trying to be quiet. You just are. Then, without warning, the bell rings again. Not a big one, just a small chime, like a reminder. You put the brush down, your fingers are stained, and there's a little ink on your sleeve that you definitely weren't supposed to get there, but no one's checking your work, no one's grading you. The scroll stays on the desk, a testament to your best effort, and your worst handwriting. Outside the cell, the hallway seems even quieter. You feel oddly exposed, like the act of copying the sutra peeled back something you didn't know you were wearing. You step outside and the sun is high now. Late morning probably. The courtyard is flooded with that clear, bright light that makes everything look sharper. Edges of roofs, the sheen of wet stone, even the swaying tips of the bamboo grove beyond the temple wall. You walk toward it instinctively. There's no sign, no instruction, but something in you wants green, wants movement. The bamboo grove is barely 100 feet wide, but the wind moves through it like it owns the place. The stalks knock and sway and whisper, and you realise this is the first loud thing you've heard in hours, and it's beautiful. You sit under one of the trees, no mat, no bell, no one watching, just you, the wind, and 1,000 thin trunks that rise like thoughts, before falling silent again. This is where it hits you. The silence of this place isn't just an absence of noise, it's a mirror, and mirrors, as you know, can be very uncomfortable. They show you your face, but also your restlessness, your impatience, your bad jokes, your ego pretending it's cool with all this when actually it's 2 rice grains away from screaming. You sit with that, for a while, maybe longer than you expected. Eventually a bell rings faintly in the distance. You rise, you dust yourself off, and for once your mind doesn't immediately start narrating your next move. You just walk. Maybe you're not failing here after all. Back in the courtyard, the pace has changed again. You hear the faint dong of the main bell tower, followed by 3 short chimes. This isn't the call for food, for chores, or for copying texts. This is the signal for afternoon meditation, and this one's different. This one walks. A line of monks forms like mist curling through the pine trees, bare feet, hands folded just below the navel. No one speaks, but everyone moves, slowly, with a rhythm that feels impossibly serene. You fall in behind a novice monk. He's maybe 16, maybe 60. Hard to tell when everyone looks like they've stopped aging at quiet wisdom. You start walking. The pace is glacial. You want to take 3 steps for everyone they take, but you don't. You can't. The rule is simple. Match the pace. 1 foot, stop, breathe. 1 foot, stop, breathe. Walking meditation, or kinhin, wasn't just a Japanese Zen thing. Korean Seon temples practiced it too, especially during long retreats. Monks believed motion helped circulate the insight generated during sitting meditation. In other words, enlightenment doesn't just happen on a cushion, it walks beside you. You pass through the main gate, down a path lined with gnarled trees and wet stones. Each footfall lands softer now. Your toes are learning to listen. You begin to notice things. The exact squish of moss underfoot, the crinkle of a dry leaf, the strange way the breeze seems to speak in syllables. For a moment your mind goes quiet. Then, predictably, it kicks back in. Am I doing this right? Should my hands be higher? Is that the same squirrel from earlier? And then, whack, not on you, on the monk ahead. One of the seniors has gently tapped his shoulder with a long flat stick. The monk nods. No flinching, no embarrassment. It's not punishment, it's a reminder. Be here. This practice stick is called a keisaku. In Korean temples, it's sometimes used during walking meditation when someone visibly drifts. You'd think it's rude. But here, it's compassionate correction. Like your thoughts getting a post-it note. Hey, you left the moment. You continue walking. Step, breath, step, breath. The forest opens up to a small clearing, gravel, perfectly raked. The line continues its slow, deliberate circle. You're now in full monk cosplay, silent, slow, and deeply unsure if your foot is making too much noise. You remember to breathe. This is harder than it looks. Every part of you wants to distract, to narrate, to plan dinner or replay that one thing you said 3 years ago. But here, those thoughts feel like static, unnecessary, like trying to hum over a symphony. Historical moment incoming. During the 12th century, Korea was undergoing major cultural and political change. The Goryeo dynasty was thriving, but the Buddhist establishment was being challenged by rising Confucian values. Some forest monasteries doubled down, isolating themselves, deepening their practices, insisting on silence as a form of resistance. While cities argued, these monks listened, to wind, to breath, to the space between thoughts. Quirky side note: there were occasional reports, especially in mountain temples, of monks walking meditation so deeply focused that they unknowingly circled for hours without realizing the sun had moved. One story tells of a monk who walked until he collapsed, only to wake and claim he'd briefly left the wheel of rebirth. Skeptical? Sure. But try this walk without getting bored, and then we'll talk. The line completes the loop. One more pass through the pines, back toward the temple walls. You feel your calves burning from restraint, your spine straight from effort, and then it ends. The monks stop at the bell tower. One novice bows and rings the small bell once. The line disperses, not into chaos, but into perfectly calm drift. Everyone goes where they need to go. No one speaks. It's like watching a tree shed its leaves. You, however, are left standing there. You don't know where you're supposed to be. But something in you doesn't panic this time. You just wait. Eventually, a young monk gestures toward the rear garden. You follow him down a narrow stone path where vegetable beds grow in tidy rows. Radish, cabbage, maybe some garlic. And in the centre, a small wooden bench. He bows slightly. You sit. Sunlight warms the back of your neck. A bee hums past your ear. Somewhere, water trickles. No instruction, no bell. Just a bench in a garden. You don't do anything. You don't try to meditate. You just sit. And here's the strange thing. It feels like enough. The sun climbs higher, casting shadows across the earth. A leaf tumbles lazily through the air and lands beside your foot. You think, maybe for the first time today, that you could stay like this. That this moment is not a bridge to anything else. Not a means. Just an end. And for once you don't ruin it by thinking too hard. You stay there for a while. The bee returns. You don't flinch. The wind picks up again, but now it sounds less like whispering and more like breathing. Maybe it was never the trees. Maybe it was you all along. Eventually the spell breaks. Not rudely, but gently, like a dream fading before you're quite ready to let it go. A distant bell sounds, soft and low. You rise without being told. Your legs don't protest as much this time. Maybe they've given up. Or maybe they're learning too. You follow the sound, your feet now finding paths without hesitation. The monastery isn't just a place anymore. It's a rhythm you're beginning to memorize. You re-enter the main hall. No one speaks. Everyone is already sitting. You take your place. Same mat, same breath, same silence. But this time, the silence feels different. It's not empty. It's full. This is breath meditation again. Seated, unmoving. The kind of stillness that once made you twitch now feels familiar, maybe even comforting. You begin to notice your inhale, the pause at the top, the slow, steady exhale. Inhale, pause, exhale, and again. There are no clocks here, no teachers snapping their fingers or apps rewarding you with streaks. Just monks who've been doing this for years, some for decades. Some of them never left this mountain. And the weird part? You don't feel judged. Not for your crooked posture, not for your racing thoughts, not for still secretly fantasizing about hot noodles and a pillow thicker than a folded rag. Here's the historical meat for this round. In the 1100s, Korean Seon monasteries were undergoing a quiet revolution. The balance of power was shifting from large court-sponsored temples toward more remote mountain centres. These forest temples became crucibles for self-discipline, places where doctrinal debates were tossed aside in favour of lived experience. The idea wasn't to learn Buddhism, it was to become it. And here's your quirky morsel. In some traditions, monks would meditate so long that calluses formed on their knees. Others tied their robes in special knots that would dig into their flesh if they started to slump, as a kind of physical alarm. In one legend, a monk stitched a single bell into his robe hem. If it jingled, he knew his posture was failing. If it didn't, he was a rock. Historians still argue whether the intensity of these practices was consistent across temples. Some say forest monasteries were universally harsh and ascetic. Others suggest some were more relaxed, even playful, especially in the winter months when food was scarce, and meditation was naturally harder to maintain. You won't get a definitive answer from the monks here. They're not interested in arguing. They're too busy being quiet. You try to follow them. Back on the mat, your thoughts are quieter now. Not silent, but manageable, like a radio turned to a whisper. You notice when they appear. You notice when they drift away. And in between, there's a space. A strange, beautiful space. You don't know how long you sit. Long enough to forget you're trying. Long enough for your breath to become your whole world. Then a bell rings. Small, metallic, exact. Everyone bows. You bow too. But this time, you don't feel like you're copying them. You feel like you belong. The group stands and moves again. You follow them into a smaller room behind the hall. It's dim and warm. Floor cushions are set in a wide circle, and in the centre, a single candle. A senior monk enters and nods to the group. Then he sits. Everyone follows. This is a Dharma talk, but not in the TED Talk sense. No stage, no microphone, no booming voice telling you how to optimize your soul. Just a monk speaking softly, slowly, often in metaphors that seem like riddles until you think about them for 2 hours and realize they were laser precise. Tonight's lesson, if you can call it that, is about emptiness. He doesn't define it. He just describes it, like a house with no furniture, a river without a name, a breath that no longer feels like yours or anyone's. He speaks maybe 3 sentences, then stops. No one fills the silence. You want to. You want to say, wait, what does that mean? Or, can you explain that part about the mirror and the firefly? But you don't. You let it hang. You sit with it. And slowly it seeps in. Maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe sitting with the not knowing is the whole thing. Eventually the candle is snuffed. The room darkens. You bow again. And now comes something new. Free meditation. You're told, silently through gesture and rhythm, that you can go anywhere on the temple grounds. Find a place, sit, stand, walk. Lie down under a tree if you want. Just don't speak. Just don't leave. You choose the small stone bench near the outer wall. The sun is low again, golden and long. The light makes the dust in the air look like fireflies. You sit. No instruction. No app. Just you. And finally, silence that feels like home. You notice your breath again. And maybe for the first time, it feels like something you trust. You remain on the stone bench, the sun slowly melting into the forest beyond the wall. Its golden light stretches long, casting the pine shadows across the courtyard like fingers reaching inward. The breeze settles, birds quiet down. Even the bees seem to sense it's time to go still. You breathe, not the kind of breath you force, just the breath that happens. In, out, a wind of your own. Then, just as the light begins to blue, a bell chimes. Not a loud one. Not the grand bell in the tower. This one is smaller, more refined, precise, like a whispered sentence with no wasted syllables. You stand, not because anyone says to, but because your body knows what to do now. You're becoming part of the rhythm. One bell, one body. It's weirdly comforting. You follow the other monks to the side hall again, where a simple meal is waiting. It's almost identical to breakfast. A little barley, a little broth. A side of fermented radish that could probably be used to etch stone. But this time, you eat it without complaint. Without narrative. You're not judging it. You're not fantasizing about fries. You're just chewing. And here's the wild part, it actually tastes like something now. Not much, but you can feel the grain, the texture, the slight nutty edge of the barley. The broth warms your insides in a way it didn't before, and the radish, well, it still tastes like a dare, but you eat it anyway. Monks aren't talking, of course, but there's communication happening. Bowing before the meal, slight nods. The shared rhythm of the bowls. Even how you stack your dishes is part of the conversation. No waste, no noise, no ego. This meal, like the others, ends with the Baogongyang ritual. Hot water poured into the bowl, swirled to collect leftovers, then drunk like tea. You do it better this time. No sloshing, no clumsy grip. You might even pass for someone who belongs here, at least from a distance. Here's your historical nugget for tonight. Monastic meals were carefully designed to cultivate mindfulness. Not just because monks wanted to live simply, but because they believed every act was a chance for awakening. Washing a bowl was as sacred as reciting a sutra. The temple was not a retreat from life. It was life, distilled. And your quirky bite of trivia? In some temples, meals were eaten so silently and precisely that monks developed elaborate hand signals for requests. A flick of the fingers meant more water. A raised thumb meant a utensil was missing. In one record, a novice accidentally signed for a toilet break and was served a second helping instead. He didn't make that mistake again. Historians still debate whether these rituals were uniform across regions. Some temples were more relaxed, especially in the warmer southern provinces, while others, especially high mountain temples, insisted on stricter forms, seeing hardship as a gate to deeper insight. You, clearly, have entered one of the stricter gates. After dinner, there's a short break. Not for lounging, of course, for silent reflection. You walk back toward the bamboo grove. The air is cooler now, thinner. Every breath pulls in the scent of wood smoke and cold stone. The sky overhead is shifting into deep indigo, stars beginning to blink awake. The moon is rising, full, pale, and impossibly calm. You think of the city lights back home, where stars are just rumours. Here, the sky looks like it remembers things. You sit on a stone under the tallest stalks and stare up. Silence this deep doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels alive. A bird rustles in the branches. You don't startle. A beetle clicks by your foot. You don't move. You're becoming fluent in stillness. Then, a sound. Not natural. Not a bell. Footsteps. You look over and see him again, the silent monk. He's young but not new. There's a stillness in his face that unnerves you. He doesn't smile. He doesn't frown. He just is. He sits across from you. Not close, but close enough. And you both just sit. You try not to look, but you sneak a glance. His posture is perfect, his breathing slow, his hands rest lightly, gently on his knees, and his eyes are open. He's watching. Not you exactly, just everything. You feel your own spine straighten without meaning to. What is he thinking? Does he think you're ridiculous? Or maybe, just maybe, he's not thinking at all. You try to match him. Not out of competition, but curiosity. Can you sit like that? Can you just be like that? 10 minutes pass, or maybe 20. The forest ticks on. He finally stands, bows, and leaves. No words, no messages. But somehow it feels like he told you everything. You stay a little longer. You don't need a bell to keep you here. And when you finally rise, it's slow, natural. Your body remembers. The stars are bright now. So many they make you feel small, but not in a bad way. Small like a raindrop in a wide, calm lake. You walk back to your cell, no candle in hand. You don't need one. The moonlight is enough. You can feel the floorboards now without seeing them. Each one has a voice underfoot. Inside, your mat is waiting. So is the night. You lie down, not to sleep, but just to be still. The room is dark, save for the faint blue glow slipping through the rice paper wall. You lie on your mat, arms tucked in, blanket drawn to your chest like a fragile armour. You're not quite awake, not quite asleep. Somewhere in between. A twilight of the mind, and then it returns. The silence. Not the friendly kind. The kind that settles on you, like a weight, like a fog that knows your name. You start to wonder if it's always been there, waiting, watching. The monks are asleep, you think. But not all of them. Because somewhere in the next room, or maybe just outside your thin paper wall, someone is breathing, slowly, deliberately. You can hear it. It isn't loud, but it's too intentional to ignore. You close your eyes, hoping it fades. It doesn't. It grows. Not in volume, but in presence. You can feel the breath as if it's synced with yours. Inhale, pause, exhale. You sit up, slowly. There's no sound of movement, no footsteps. But you know someone is there, not threatening, just observing. Like the forest has leaned a little too close, you lie back down, turn to your side, face the wall, still breathing. It finally fades after what feels like an hour. You're left with your heartbeat thudding against the mat and a creeping sense that this place has more eyes than monks. Here's your history snack. Many Korean Seon temples, especially those built into forests, blended Buddhism with older animistic traditions. Spirits of the mountain, ghosts of ancestors, even lingering echoes of former monks were often acknowledged, though rarely discussed. Silence wasn't just discipline, it was a form of respect, or fear. And your quirky tidbit, some temples were rumoured to be haunted by monks who had failed their spiritual training. Not in a dramatic chains-rattling way, but through subtle signs. Unopened doors found wide open, incense burned without lighting, the faint sound of sandals shuffling where no one walked. Historians still argue whether these stories were symbolic, representations of inner struggle, or if temples truly believed in haunted spaces. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. After all, a monastery isn't just a place. It's a pressure chamber for the soul, and sometimes souls crack. You finally drift off, not into restful sleep, but into something quieter, a holding pattern of breath and thought. You don't dream, or if you do, you can't remember. When you wake again, it's still dark, but there's movement. Not bells this time, bodies. The silent rustle of robes, the gentle creak of floorboards, a monk's cough, short and dry. You rise, your knees ache, your shoulders are tight, but your mind, oddly, feels clear. You walk out into the hall. No one speaks, but everyone's awake. The temple is stirring like a great wooden beast. You catch sight of the young monk again, the one with the unreadable eyes. He passes without looking at you, or maybe he does. It's hard to tell in this light. You follow the group outside. The air is colder now, not biting but serious, the kind of cold that makes you aware of every inch of your skin. They head toward the bell tower, and this time you don't just follow. You've been assigned. Tonight you are the bell keeper. You didn't ask for this role, but a novice handed you the rope earlier, thin, frayed and threaded with tradition. It's your job to pull it, not once, not twice. Exactly when the moment calls, except you have no clock, no hourglass, no sundial, no monk whispering, "Now, my child." You're meant to feel it. The bell itself is beautiful. Bronze, tall as a person, with carved symbols around its rim. A dragon winds across the top, its mouth open in a permanent silent roar. You step beside it. The striker is a long, suspended wooden beam, almost like a battering ram, hanging by thick ropes. You place your hand on it and wait. The monks are gathering in the courtyard below, one by one, silent, their grey robes almost glowing in the moonlight. Your heartbeat is suddenly the loudest thing in Korea. This bell isn't just for noise. It marks the shift from night to devotion. It begins the ritual. It echoes through valley and memory, and if you strike it wrong, too early, too late, too loud, you don't just embarrass yourself. You interrupt time. You inhale, you exhale, you pull. The beam swings, and the bell sings. A deep, perfect tone rolls out across the pines like a wave made of thunder and honey. The monks bow their heads. A crow startles from a branch and vanishes into the dark. You did it. You breathe again. And then, another chime, this time from the smaller temple bell below. The rhythm continues. Meditation begins again. You pass the rope back to the novice with the quietest nod of your life. You're nobody here, and somehow that feels okay. You drift back to your cell. The forest doesn't seem quite as strange now, still wild, but not unkind. You lie down once more, and this time, when you close your eyes, the silence is yours. Dawn rises like breath on a mirror, soft, slow, barely visible at first. A pale blush smears across the eastern sky, casting silver over the tiled roofs and making the dew on every blade of grass glisten like tiny prayer beads. You sit up on your mat before the next bell even rings. Your body moves more easily now. It still aches, sure, but the kind of ache that's earned, not resented. A soreness that says, you're doing it. You roll your shoulders, stretch your back, pull on your robe. You no longer fumble with the fabric like before. It wraps around you with ease, not because the robe has changed. You have. Your hands are steadier, your mind less frantic. You step into the morning. The air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine sap, old stone, and something faintly sweet. Perhaps a trace of incense still lingering from last night's final chant. It clings to everything here. Even the silence smells like reverence. You walk with the others, barefoot as always, toward the main hall. But today's meditation takes place not inside, but under the open sky. The monks are seated on straw mats in the courtyard facing east. The horizon glows. A single novice holds a small brass bowl. He lifts it, lets it sing. The sound rings out and you begin. Eyes half closed, back straight, knees rooted to the earth. This is sunrise zazen, and it's not just beautiful, it's brutal. Because now, more than ever, your mind wants to wander. It wants to name the colour of the sky. It wants to marvel at the way the light breaks across the mountain. It wants to whisper things like, you should remember this moment forever. But Zazen doesn't care about poetry. Zazen asks you to let go. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Again and again. You try. You fail. You try again. Here's your historical nugget. In many Goryeo-era monasteries, sunrise meditation wasn't optional. It was the anchor of the day. The moment when monks connected not just with themselves, but with the rhythm of nature. The point wasn't to romanticize the dawn. It was to witness it without grasping. And your odd little footnote for this section? Some monks used to shave their heads just before sunrise, believing it helped them greet the light with a clean mind. There's even record of one particularly intense monk who shaved his eyebrows too for full sensory humility. That trend, thankfully, did not catch on. Historians still argue whether these sunrise rituals were rigidly enforced or gently encouraged. Some texts suggest a softer approach in smaller temples where elderly monks or sick novices were excused. But the forest temples, the high ones, they rarely bent the schedule. If the sun could rise on time, so could you. You try again to let go. Your breath returns. The light on your face grows warmer, and then it happens. Not loudly, not dramatically, just suddenly. Your thoughts stop, only for a moment, but it's real. A pause, a space. You're not planning or remembering. You're not narrating your own experience. You're just here. The warmth of the sun on your cheek, the distant rustle of wind in the pines, the sensation of being entirely awake without needing to do anything about it. Then your knee spasms, and the moment breaks. Of course it does. You shift slightly. A monk nearby raises an eyebrow. You pretend it was intentional. The bell rings again. Once, twice. That's the end. You bow, and the monks rise together, like waves lifting off the shore. Now it's time for work. Again. Today, you're assigned to help with laundry. You think, finally, something easy. Oh, sweet fool. You're led to a narrow courtyard where garments hang from bamboo poles, stiff from last night's frost. Two novices kneel beside a massive stone basin filled with icy water. You're handed a bar of soap, a wooden board, and the most sarcastic smile a monk can give without using his face. You kneel. Your knees complain. Your fingers go numb, you scrub anyway. The soap is soft and fragrant, made from ash and pine oil. It smells like every part of this mountain, clean, earthy, and deeply unimpressed with you. The robes you scrub are heavy and coarse, holding water like guilt. You beat them against the stone, rinse, twist, repeat. Over and over, this is laundry as penance. You try to find a rhythm, your back aches, your elbows slip, but your thoughts slow. Your breath steadies. The repetition becomes a kind of prayer, a motion mantra. Here's the thing, these robes aren't just clothes, they're symbols, uniforms of humility. Every fold, every stitch, every spot of dirt is a mirror of the self. You're not cleaning cloth, you're cleaning mind. Here's a quirky historical wash cycle for you. Some monks believed that washing robes should be done only with mountain-fed water, never from wells. Why? Because well water was stagnant, and stagnation bred ego. Mountain water flowed. Flow meant freedom. Historians still debate whether laundry was rotated on a strict weekly cycle or done as needed. One scroll from the Goryeo period records a monk who insisted on washing his robe daily, until a senior scolded him for being too attached to appearance. The balance between cleanliness and vanity? Still tricky. You rinse one final robe, wring it out, hang it carefully on the line. Your hands are red and trembling, but your mind, surprisingly still. You look at your fingers, at the faint blue of your nails, at the water dripping from your sleeves, and then you laugh. Quietly. Just a puff of air through your nose, but still. A monk nearby turns, raises one eyebrow. You bow, very deeply. He bows back, even deeper. And in that tiny exchange, the silence softens. Just a little. The robes drip quietly behind you, a rhythm of their own, plip, plip, plip into the frost-hardened soil. You stretch your back, joints crackling like old floorboards, and straighten from the washing basin. A novice gestures toward the upper courtyard. No words, just a flick of the hand. You bow, because that's the only form of "okay, got it" here, and follow him uphill, soles pressing wetly against the path. The courtyard is silent. Again, of course, but there's a tension in the air now, like the moment before a curtain rises. Monks are kneeling in rows. You recognize many of them. Some you don't. A few look like they haven't moved since the last time you blinked. Then he appears. The abbot. You've heard him mentioned in whispers, though no one actually whispers here. It's more a shared stillness, a deferential hush that ripples outward whenever his name passes through a glance. He moves like fog, pale robe, shaved head, hands folded just above the waist. His eyes barely register you as he steps onto the wooden platform. No throne, no cushion, just a raised mat and a small steaming bowl of tea. He sits, cross-legged, effortlessly, as though gravity is a myth to him. You sit too, lower than the rest. He doesn't speak. You wait. 10 full minutes pass, still no words, and then finally, 3. Just 3. He says, "Form is emptiness." Then he takes a sip of tea. Silence returns. That's it. That's the sermon. No explanation. No follow-up. No, "Hey guys, thanks for coming to my TED Talk." Just form is emptiness, and the clink of ceramic. Your brain flips through interpretations like a stressed-out librarian. What does it mean? Why only that? Was it a test? Is he messing with you? Probably not. Probably yes. This is what's called a hwadu, a Korean Zen riddle or statement designed to break your habitual thinking. The point isn't to solve it. The point is to let it chew a hole through the part of your brain that always needs meaning wrapped in a neat little bow. Historical background here. Goryeo-era Seon monks were known for their use of hwadu as a daily spiritual tool. They weren't intellectual puzzles, they were time bombs, a sentence that might detonate enlightenment. 2 weeks or 2 decades later. Quirky trivia for the day. Some masters were so committed to brevity that they'd give a single hwadu to a disciple and then refuse to speak to them for years. If the student solved it, great. If not, they'd just keep meditating with it in their skull like a splinter. Historians still debate whether form is emptiness came from Chinese Chan, Indian Madhyamaka philosophy, or a particularly poetic monk who forgot his script. Either way, it stuck, and now it's yours. The abbot finishes his tea. He bows once, stands, leaves, no one follows. They stay kneeling, still absorbing the aftershock of 3 tiny words. You sit with it. Form is emptiness. You try not to analyze it. You try not to chase it, but it chases you, all the way down to your bones. Eventually the group disperses. You drift down a side path, still dazed. Your next task, tea duty. You're led to a small, quiet room. A single candle glows beside a clay teapot. You're alone. Your job? Prepare tea for the next visitor. Quietly, carefully, reverently. You boil water over a small brazier, the flames crackling like whispers. You rinse the cups, warm the pot, each movement deliberate, each breath steady. You're supposed to become the tea. That's what the monk said. Well, not said exactly. More like pantomimed with intense eye contact and a lot of eyebrows. The tea is green, bitter, alive. You pour it into a ceramic bowl and place it on the tray. The next monk enters. He bows. You bow. He sips. No one speaks. This is not a performance. This is presence. And suddenly you understand the weight of what you're doing. This isn't about the tea. It's about how not to rush. It's about noticing the warmth of the cup in your hand, the way the steam swirls before it vanishes, the sound of liquid moving from pot to bowl. It's about being here, without editing the moment. Here's a little-known fact. The Korean tea ceremony, or darie, dates back to this very period. It was practiced in temples long before it became a formal part of aristocratic life. Monks saw tea not as a luxury, but as a sacred companion to meditation, a brief, fragrant bridge between breath and silence. And here's your quirky corner. Some monks developed entire choreographies for serving tea, including how many degrees the wrist should rotate during the pour. One temple manuscript even includes a line that translates to, "If your tea splashes, so does your mind," which sounds about right. Historians still debate how structured the tea practice was in smaller, remote temples. Some claim it was deeply ritualized. Others argue it was simply a quiet, nourishing pause. Either way, you're in the middle of it now, holding a bowl of green liquid like it might contain the universe. And maybe it does. You bow. The monk finishes. He leaves. You remain. The candle flickers beside you. The coals hiss. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a sentence continues to echo. Form is emptiness. You don't understand it, but you also don't mind. The candle burns lower. The brazier's warmth is fading. You sit in the stillness after tea like someone who's just witnessed something sacred, but doesn't quite know what to do with the feeling. You should leave. Probably, but your legs won't move, or maybe they just don't need to. You feel emptied. Not in a bad way. More like how a cup feels when it's finally rinsed clean. Still useful, but silent. Eventually a novice arrives. You bow. He doesn't speak. None of them ever do. But he gives you the universal look of, yes, you're due somewhere. You follow him past the bell tower, past the statue of the Bodhisattva wrapped in morning shadow, and toward the most mundane part of the monastery, the bathhouse. It's not what you'd expect. No steam, no soft towels, no relax and rejuvenate slogans carved into wood. It's a squat building made of stone and planks, with a single guttered pipe feeding icy spring water into a square tub. Today your task is cleaning it, by candlelight. You're handed a brush made of bundled reeds, worn smooth by decades of scrubbing. The floor is damp, the walls are coated in the faint sheen of lichen and years. You roll up your sleeves, begin scrubbing. At first it feels pointless. You're pushing cold water around a cold room with a cold brush, and no one is going to thank you for it. But that's the trick, isn't it? There is no you here. There's just the work, just the brush, just the square of floor you're slowly revealing under layers of grime and thought. It takes a while, but you find the rhythm. Scrub, rinse, scrub, rinse. Your thoughts fade with each motion. Here's your historical lather. Monastic bathhouses were considered essential in Buddhist temples, not for comfort, but for purity, both spiritual and physical. Bathing was seen as a practice of mindfulness and humility. You cleaned the body to remind yourself that the body wasn't yours to begin with, and your odd little tidbit. In some Goryeo-era temples, bathhouse duty was reserved for the most junior monks as a test of ego. If you complained, you were deemed not yet ready for inner heat. But if you scrubbed without judgment, even when no one watched, you were said to be beginning to boil. A metaphor, of course, hopefully. Historians still argue whether bathhouse labour was symbolic or just practical. Some records show elaborate rituals tied to cleansing. Others suggest it was simply what had to be done to keep mould off the floor. Both can be true, and right now your wrinkled hands don't care, they're just here, scrubbing. You pause for a moment, stretch your back, look around. The room is almost glowing now, not from polish, from absence. There's nothing left but clean stone and silence. You step outside into the garden behind the bathhouse. A few monks are pruning trees with small curved blades. Not talking, just shaping. One nods at you. You bow back. There's a kinship here, built entirely on mutual silence and shared tasks. Then, another bell. You're not even surprised. Bells are like punctuation here. They tell you when to begin, when to stop, when to breathe differently. You're starting to feel their rhythm like a pulse in your chest. You follow it back to the main courtyard, chanting time. Everyone gathers in the temple hall. You kneel at the back. A novice hands you a prayer book, handwritten, bound in rough cloth. You open it and see a blur of characters that may as well be alien code. The page is old, ink faded in places, margins stained with candle wax. The chant begins. It's low, deep, a hum more than words, the kind of sound that begins in the chest and ends somewhere in the roof of your mouth. You try to follow. At first it's awkward. Your tongue doesn't know what to do. Your voice cracks, but no one's watching you. They're not chanting at anything. They're just merging. The words aren't important. It's the sound, the breath, the fact that 50 voices become one note, one current. You get swept into it, and soon your voice is there too. Imperfect, but there. It feels ancient, like something your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. Here's the historical chorus. Buddhist chanting in medieval Korea wasn't always uniform. Different temples used different rhythms, melodies, even pronunciations. Some scholars argue that chanting itself was seen as a bridge between the seen and unseen, a kind of sonic offering to the invisible workings of the universe. And the quirky note for today? There are records of monks chanting so long that their lips blistered. One particularly zealous practitioner in the Goryeo period supposedly lost his voice for a month and was praised for burning with sound. Let's hope your vocal cords aren't quite so enthusiastic. Historians still debate whether chanting was considered more effective when understood or simply felt. Some argue that reciting without comprehension diluted the meaning. Others insisted the sound alone was enough to shape consciousness. You're too far in now to care. The chant grows louder. The hall vibrates. Your chest vibrates. You're no longer aware of your body, just the syllables spilling from your mouth in unison with 50 other people who also don't care if they're off key. The bell chimes again. Everything stops. No applause, no bow, just silence and a breath. And then, like smoke, everyone disperses. You close the prayer book, set it gently on the altar, stand. Your voice feels raw, but your mind, quiet, settled, not blank, just softened. You walk out into the evening light, the pine shadows stretching longer than you remembered. You've chanted, scrubbed, bowed, sat and served. And through it all, somehow, you've vanished a little, and in the space that's left behind, something peaceful. You thought the chanting would be the crescendo, the emotional peak of your monastic movie montage. But no, you've got another starring role to play, and this one involves timing, precise timing, without a watch, without a clock, just you, a giant bronze bell, and about 1,000 years of ritual judgment waiting to fall if you mess it up. Welcome to bell duty. Again. But this time, it's real bell duty. Not the polite, give it a tug when the stars align kind. This is the sunset bell. The big one. The resonant heart of the monastery that tells every monk, every bird, every ghost in the forest, day is done, prepare for the night watch. You've been summoned for this honour by a senior monk who gives you the most serious nod you've received in days. He gestures to the bell tower, hands you the thick rope, and steps back as if passing you a live wire. You look up. The bell is huge. It hangs from a wooden beam wrapped in ancient silk that's gone soft and grey with time. The striker is a horizontal log, worn smooth by centuries of identical movements. The air around it smells of oxidized metal, old prayers and pine pitch. Your palms sweat. You're supposed to feel the moment. Not estimate, not guess, just know, like how animals know when an earthquake is coming. So, you wait. The sun sinks lower, shadows reach across the courtyard. The monks begin to gather near the steps of the main hall, sitting, kneeling, some closing their eyes. They're waiting, but not for you, for the sound. One note, that's all it takes. You hold the rope, you inhale, you exhale, you pull. The striker swings. Thung! The bell sings, low, rich, endless, like thunder wrapped in velvet, like the universe humming in its sleep. Heads bow, birds scatter. The sound rolls down the mountain like a slow avalanche of bronze. And for a moment, just one, you don't feel anxious or out of place or terrified of making a fool of yourself. You feel aligned. Here's the historical heartbeat. In many temples, the evening bell was more than a signal. It was a spiritual act, a way of calling all beings to wakefulness, even as the world fell into sleep. Some monks believed the vibrations reached the underworld. Others said it called the dead to remember their name. And your quirky snippet? There are records of bell keepers who became famous for their technique. One monk in particular, known only as One Breath Sion, was said to time his strikes so perfectly that the echoes would fold over each other like waves. A travelling magistrate once called it the sound that made me forget my horse had diarrhea, which honestly is the highest praise a monk could hope for. Historians still argue whether bell ringing was considered a lowly job or a sacred one. Some temples gave the task to novices, others only to the most advanced practitioners. It depended on the lineage, the philosophy, and probably how many monks were willing to admit they couldn't tell time without a sundial. You return the rope to its hook. The courtyard is still, no applause, just deep collective stillness. You descend the steps of the tower, and as your bare feet touch the cool stones again, a strange thing happens. The monks bow to you. Not all at once, not dramatically, but a few, as you pass, lower their heads, acknowledging not your performance, but your presence. You bow back, trying not to grin. Now it's time for evening maintenance, a kind of spiritual cool-down. Tonight, you've been assigned to the candle rounds. You walk through the temple's smaller buildings with a single reed torch, extinguishing candles one by one. You do it slowly, with care, not because you're afraid of fire, though yes, still a healthy fear, but because this is part of the ritual. Darkness must arrive gently here. Each flame snuffs out with a whisper. Each room breathes deeper once it's dark. You step into the meditation hall, last candle. It flickers, trembling at the end of its wick. You stare at it. Let it burn a little longer. It seems reluctant. Then you pinch it out. Darkness folds in, and with it comes a coolness, like the room is exhaling. Here's your tiny insight for the evening. In many temples, light wasn't just utility. It was a symbol of mind. Lighting a candle was an offering. Extinguishing it was a return to source. The act was never just about visibility. It was about reverence. You weren't lighting for the eyes. You were lighting for the heart. And your historical footnote? Some temples were known to use exactly 108 candles each day, aligning with the 108 earthly desires in Buddhist cosmology, each flame a metaphor. Eeriest, each extinguishing, a letting go. That's a lot of candles, and a lot of letting go. Historians still debate whether this exact number was universal or symbolic. In remote monasteries like yours, simplicity likely prevailed. But the spirit of the practice, the ritual of light and darkness, remained sacred. You finish the rounds. The monastery now glows only with moonlight and memory. You return to your cell, not quickly, not slowly, just in step. When you lie down on your mat, you don't flop or sigh or ache. You just rest. And for the first time, it doesn't feel like recovery. It feels like arrival. You wake to darkness, but not the kind that threatens. It's thick, still, full, but strangely soft, like a blanket stretched over the world. No bell this time, no assigned task. Just a deep pull in your chest that says, get up anyway. You move quietly. Your body, now familiar with the chill of morning stone, doesn't protest as much. The mat rolls up easily. The robe slides on like muscle memory. You no longer second-guess the motion of your hands. You no longer need to be told where to go. Because you want to go, you slip outside. The courtyard is empty, and yet it isn't. The whole place feels awake, though nothing stirs, as if the buildings themselves have breath. You walk slowly toward the meditation hall, not for instruction, not out of obligation, just because that's where the stillness leads. The doors are open. Candles flicker along the walls, tall and thin like shadows caught mid-thought. A few monks sit already, some in full lotus, others kneeling, all of them breathing like trees. You sit. No bell, no voice, just breath. And then chanting, but not lead chanting, not coordinated, just one voice, soft, low, from the far corner of the room, not loud enough to disrupt, just enough to set a tone. It spreads, not quickly, like moss. Another voice joins, then another. Soon it becomes a tide, no books, no page turns. Just memory. And you, sitting in the swell of it. You close your eyes, you don't know the words, but you don't need them, you feel them. The shape, the rise and fall, the vibration in the floorboards beneath your knees. This is Sori Sion, the meditative chanting style unique to certain Korean temples. Somewhat rare, even in its time, but preserved in places like this. No formal structure, just spontaneous, heart-led recitation, often from memory, always from presence. Here's your historical gem. During the Goryeo dynasty, Buddhist chanting was seen not only as liturgical but medicinal. Monks believed that certain syllables properly pronounced could balance breath, calm the nerves, and sharpen attention. Even today, echoes of that philosophy linger in Seonbulga, Korea's living temple chant tradition. And your oddball fact? Some temples designated one monk as the tonal root. His job was to sing the first note of any chant. If his pitch was off, the whole thing wobbled. In one recorded case, the same monk served as tonal root for 40 years without missing a note. They nicknamed him Steady Ox, a voice like a bell, and reportedly a laugh like a goat. Historians still debate how much improvisation was allowed in these early chants. Some scholars argue for strict melodic lines. Others suggest a free-form, jazz-like approach to syllabic delivery. Here, at least, it feels improvised, but deeply coherent. Like a river deciding where to flow. You find yourself humming along. Not loudly, not confidently, but honestly. It feels good, like your body has been waiting to make sound for days. Not noise, sound. And then, all at once, it ends. Not in a cut-off. It dissolves. One by one, the voices fall away until the room is candlelight and breath again. No one claps, but something deep inside you does. Afterwards, you step outside again. The sky is that pre-dawn purple, the moment before colour starts coming back into the world. You decide to take the long path around the outer wall. You walk slowly, no direction, just forward. The path curls toward a slope lined with young pine. You follow it up, cresting a small ridge you hadn't noticed before. And there, like a secret, the hermit's hut. It's barely more than a shack, no door, one wall open to the mountain. Inside, a mat, a stone lantern, a pile of twigs. No decoration, no comfort, just space. You don't go in, but you bow. Something about this place feels sacred. Not because of what it is, but because of what it isn't. Here's your historical deep dive. In the Korean Seon tradition, hermitage practice, known as dongjeng, was seen as a stage of deep devotion. Monks would retreat into isolated huts, sometimes for years, practicing alone with no visitors, no guidance, and almost no food. The idea was to confront the mind in its rawest state, and your offbeat detail? Some temples would bury jars of fermented radish near the hermitages, just in case the monk refused all outside contact. One scroll describes a hermit who communicated solely by rearranging stones outside his hut. His last message, according to lore, was a perfect circle. Historians still debate whether these recluses were revered or gently pitied by the rest of the Sangha. Some say they were seen as enlightened. Others believe they were simply the most stubborn monks of the lot, probably both. You sit just outside the hut, not intruding, just resting. The wind up here is thinner. You can see the monastery below, the curved roofs, the flicker of morning lanterns, the slow, deliberate movement of the first kitchen monks. And above it all the sky lightens. You breathe, and something in you unclenches. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just a quiet loosening of the grip you didn't realise you'd had on yourself. The sun finally breaches the ridge, an orange sliver that sends long, slanted light across the treetops. The hermit's hut behind you glows on one side, still shadowed on the other, like even the mountain can't quite decide whether to wake or not. You start walking back. The gravel path crunches underfoot. You pass a sleeping crow, wings fluffed, head tucked beneath one inky fold. Even the birds take breaks here. You've been in this monastery for what? 2 days? 3? Time has lost its outline. You haven't checked a clock in what feels like forever. You're no longer asking, what time is it? But rather, what is now asking of me? You arrive in the outer courtyard just as the first wave of chores is ending. Monks rise from their tasks. Some have straw in their hair, others carry brooms. One walks by with a bundle of wet wood, and you swear his footsteps don't even leave prints. A novice gestures for you to follow. You're not surprised, you don't even resist, you just go. This time, it's toward the kitchen. A long, narrow building with low ceilings. Always warm, always slightly smoky. You enter and feel the shift instantly. This is the beating heart of the monastery. No one talks, but things move here. Rice steaming, barley roasting, radishes soaking in salted water. It's calm but not slow. You're handed a cloth and led to the cutting table. A monk slices daikon with hypnotic precision, each piece identical to the last. You're given a knife and a small mountain of scallions. You begin chopping, badly, too big, then too small, then crooked. Then one rolls off the board and disappears under a shelf. You look up, expecting judgment. But the monk beside you just keeps slicing. No one corrects you. Because eventually the rhythm finds you. Slice, slide, wipe, breathe. Your breath matches the motion. The scallions surrender without complaint. The green stains your fingers. The smell clings. You lose track of the pile. You just keep going. This is Samu. Work practice, not a task, not a chore, a moving meditation. Every movement is a continuation of Zazen. Every act, a chance to dissolve the self. Here's the historical seasoning. Sion temples were unique in how they blurred the line between meditation and labour. In many schools, work was a distraction from study. But in Sion, labour was the study. Chopping vegetables could be as holy as copying scripture, especially if you were awake to it. And your quirky morsel. One monastery recorded an entire kitchen staff that vowed not to speak or make eye contact for 5 years straight. Their dishes became legendary, not for taste, but for the way they seemed to nourish more than the body. Food that bows, one traveller wrote in his diary. I've never eaten something so quiet. Historians still argue whether this reverence for work developed organically or was a response to stricter doctrinal splits with neighbouring traditions. Some say it was an evolution, others claim it was a rebellion. Either way, it baked humility into every meal. Eventually the scallions are done, you wipe your blade. Bow. Wash your hands in the basin. The soap is gritty, the water icy. You don't flinch anymore. The monk beside you nods once. You nod back. No words, just mutual acknowledgement that something passed between you. After the kitchen, you're allowed a short break. But no one naps here. No one scrolls through anything. They sit, walk, sweep, stare at stones. You find a corner under the long eaves of the main hall and lower yourself down. The wind rustles the pines like an old hymn. You notice that even the silence has textures. There's sharp silence, the kind that startles, and soft silence, the kind that folds you up inside it. This one, it's soft. You think about the past few days, the bowing, the aching knees, the chanting, the bell, the radish that tried to end you, the silence that wouldn't let go. And now, you feel different. Not in a movie transformation sort of way. No glow, no internal monologue swelling with orchestral music. Just a kind of looseness. Like the tightly coiled springs in your mind have started to unwind. And then something shifts. It's small, but unmistakable. A sound. Not birds, not monks, not the wind. A whisper. You don't know where it comes from. Maybe it wasn't even sound. Maybe it was just a knowing that dropped gently into your chest. Something that says, you're not alone here. You sit with it. No fear, no analysis, just presence. Here's your strange but true tidbit. In certain mountain monasteries, monks often reported hearing things during long stretches of silence. Bells that hadn't rung, footsteps where no one walked, whispers that felt like teachings rather than words. Some claimed it was the forest, others the old teachers who never left. You don't tell anyone, because there's nothing to explain. Just a silence that now seems full of someone else's memory. You rise, walk slowly toward the rear garden, and there, under the lowest branch of a bent pine, a monk is waiting. Not for you, but for the bell. Because it's almost time to chant again. You nod, and the monk nods back. And though not a single word is spoken, you feel unmistakably heard. The bell rings again, soft and distant, as if even it has become shy in this deepening quiet. You and the monk walk slowly, side by side, not in lockstep but in something gentler. Like your footsteps are learning each other. He doesn't speak. You don't expect him to. The moment doesn't need fixing. You reach the chanting hall. It's nearly dusk now. The lanterns glow amber behind rice paper panels, and smoke from a fresh coil of incense curls upward like a lazy thought. You bow at the threshold and enter. Tonight's chant begins with the Heart Sutra. You've seen the text before, countless brushstrokes in black ink across a long unfolding scroll. You don't know it by heart, but you remember fragments. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The words circle back. You sit near the rear again, close enough to hear, far enough to disappear. The chant begins with a single, unhurried voice. Then another joins. Then the room becomes breath and syllable again. You close your eyes. This time you don't try to follow. You just listen. To the monks, to the breath between lines, to the silence that clings to the walls like mist, and to something else too, something you didn't notice before, a sound, a rhythm. From the far corner of the room, a barely audible wheeze, a breath caught at the end of an exhale. You open your eyes. It's an old monk. You hadn't seen him before. His face is a map of folds and years. His eyes are closed. His lips move slowly, deliberately, as if the words are coming from a deeper place than language. He isn't following the chant. He's becoming it. You watch him, entranced. He rocks gently as he speaks, like his body is a bowl carrying just enough sound to keep from spilling. And that's when you notice. Everyone else has slowed slightly. Their rhythm adapts to his. They let him lead without looking, just listening, just trusting. He finishes the verse, then stills, and the chant dissolves into that enormous quiet again. Everyone bows. You bow. The old monk opens his eyes and glances your way, just briefly. Not a smile, not quite. More like a knowing, a message without shape. You return to your feet and file out with the others. The sky has darkened. The courtyard is painted in navy blue and candlelight. You start walking toward your cell, but something stops you. A small sound, a giggle. It's quick, suppressed. From behind one of the rear buildings, not malicious, just human. You step quietly around the corner, and you see them. 2 novices, maybe 13, maybe 15, sitting cross-legged beside a pile of firewood, trying very hard to look serious. But one of them just cracked, and the other is failing to recover. They notice you. Their eyes widen. You freeze. They look terrified. But instead of scolding or raising a brow or turning silently away, you do something bold. You smile. A real one. Just a flicker. They blink. Then, one of them smiles back. It's hesitant, half-formed, like it hasn't had much practice. The other returns to stone-faced form fast, but for a second that corner of the monastery glows with something rare. Joy. You walk away without a word, because you don't need one. Here's a hidden gem for you. Laughter in monasteries wasn't forbidden, but it was often treated like fire. Useful, powerful, but requiring careful control. Some temples embraced it sparingly, allowing occasional laughing days to reset the mind. Others feared it could shatter the delicate stillness built by silence, and your quirky fact. One legendary monk, nicknamed Half Smile by his students, was known to smirk only during rice washing. They said he believed joy could be stirred into food. His disciples swore they could taste it. Historians still debate whether laughter was encouraged or repressed across different temples. Some records suggest that senior monks saw it as ego leakage. Others argued it was proof of awakening. One particularly poetic scroll states, "The enlightened man laughs, but not always out loud. Back in your cell, you sit on your mat. Not to lie down, not to sleep, just to sit. You think about the smile, the chant, the old monk's breath, the giggle beside the firewood. You think, no, you feel that all of it belongs, that maybe even joy when it's quiet, when it's offered rather than taken, is part of the practice. You fold your hands in your lap, and for the first time, you smile to no one, just because. The candlelight in your cell flickers, casting soft waves across the wall. You sit cross-legged on the mat, not moving, not meditating in the formal sense, just letting the moment settle. The smile still lingers at the edge of your lips, not giddy, not performative, just there, gentle. You breathe in, hold, exhale. You can feel the warmth of the firewood pile a courtyard away, the hush of the old monk's chant, the hidden laughter that somehow felt like a gift. There's a knock, soft, Not on your paper door, but more like a brush, bare knuckles tapping wood without the intent to interrupt. You rise, open the panel. A novice is there, holding a bundle in his arms. He bows, hands it to you. It's a scroll, fresh parchment, blank, rolled tight, secured with a string of woven grass. Beside it, a brush, a tiny clay pot of ink. You bow instinctively. He bows deeper, then he vanishes down the hall like he was never there. You unroll the scroll in your lap. There are no instructions, but you already know what this is. This is susyok, the practice of copying sacred texts again. But this time, it's not an assigned scripture. There are no pages to match, no layout to follow. This scroll is for your own lines, and you don't even need to write words. You sit back down, open the ink. The scent rises immediately, earthy, mineral, faintly metallic, like a smell from the bottom of a forgotten well. You dip the brush, touch it to the page. Nothing. Then, slowly, one stroke, then another. You're not writing letters. You're letting your hand move the way your breath does. Curves, sharp lines, repeats. Not calligraphy, not art, just presence. Here's your historical nugget. While sutra copying was common, many forest monasteries also embraced expressive transcription, a way of capturing meditative states through abstract brushwork. These weren't meant for display. In fact, they were often burned afterward as offerings to impermanence. And your curious detail? There's a preserved scrap of parchment in a remote Korean archive bearing only a single brushstroke repeated 108 times. Slightly different each time. Some scholars say it was a chant written in silence. Others think the monk was trying to perfect a single emotion. One theory suggests it was a way to mark time, a kind of monastic heartbeat. Historians still debate whether these scrolls were exercises in ego or ego death. Some called them personal expressions of the awakened mind. Others said they were distractions, practice that pulled the monk away from the body, not into it. You keep going, brush after brush, stroke after stroke. The ink dries fast in the cool night air. The scroll begins to curl slightly at the edges, but you don't mind. It adds character and imperfection. You pause, look down. The page isn't beautiful. It's not supposed to be, but it feels like you. The door opens again. No knock this time. A monk enters quietly. He doesn't speak. He just gestures for you to bring the scroll. You gather it. Follow him down a narrow side corridor you've never been through before. It leads behind the main hall, past the storerooms, past the water basins, into a small chamber open to the night sky. At the centre, a stone basin. The monk gestures. You step forward. It takes a moment to understand. This is not where you store the scroll. This is where you release it. You place it gently into the basin. A candle flickers nearby. The monk lights the edge of the scroll. The flame catches quickly. The parchment curls. The ink bubbles. Your strokes dissolve into smoke. You bow. The monk bows too. Then, just as softly as he arrived, he's gone. You stand there alone. The air smells like ash and pine. Above, stars scatter wildly across the black. No moon tonight. Just the vast, ink-dark sky that seems to echo everything you've just let go of. You return to your room, hands still faintly stained. You sit, and this time the silence feels different again. Not weightless, not heavy, but whole. Complete. Like something inside you has returned to where it came from, and was welcomed home. The night stretches wide across the mountains. The stars outside your rice paper window are steady now. No flickering, no haze. Just pinpricks of permanence in a world that otherwise shifts beneath your feet. You lie awake, but not restlessly. The mat beneath you is still thin. The air still cold. But somehow, both feel like friends now. Reliable. Grounding. There's no bell tonight. But you rise anyway. Your body knows the way. Feet glide over the wooden floor, past the low beams, past the moonlit wall where shadows dance behind bamboo. You've stopped trying to understand why you move. You just move. You drift into the main hall once more. No monks this time. Just one item waiting for you at the centre of the room. A tea set, ceramic, pale green celadon, minimal, elegant, and unmistakably old. You bow to it and begin. This is not the tea of earlier days, the one in the courtyard shared with monks by necessity. This is dairy, the Korean tea ceremony, not performed for show, not even always for company. Sometimes it's done in solitude. You boil the water slowly, the flame whispering beneath the kettle. You prepare the pot, warming it with practiced hands. Scoop in the crushed leaves, not measured by spoon, but by memory. You pour, swirl, wait. It's all deliberate, timed not by clock, but breath. You pour the tea into a tiny bowl, hold it between your palms, and drink. It's slightly bitter, slightly grassy. It has no sugar, no milk, no spice. And yet, it contains everything. Here's your historical leaf. Korean tea culture reached a quiet peak during the Goryeo period, especially among monks who used it not as refreshment but as a meditative anchor. The whole point was stillness, a single act done fully. Tea was considered the bridge between mind and matter, boiled mindfulness, and your delightful little detail. Some monks were so attuned to their tea that they gave it names based on the sensation it left in the body. Moon behind mist, ink on silk. One scroll mentions a cup described as like breathing next to a waterfall in winter, which, come to think of it, is exactly what this one tastes like. Historians still discuss whether tea was ritualized equally across all monasteries or if some allowed for a more casual approach. Some documents suggest highly formal sequences. Others imply that one monk with a good kettle was all you needed. What's agreed on is this. The tea was never just tea. You finish your second bowl, then a third. You pour the last for an empty space across from you. You bow to it. You drink that one too. Not because you're lonely, but because something about the moment feels shared. With who? Maybe the tea, maybe the forest, maybe the you that's starting to melt away under all this silence. You clean the bowl, dry the pot. Return it to its tray with reverence. There's something calming about placing each item exactly where it belongs. Like maybe, tonight, you belong too. You step outside. The moon has returned, barely, a sliver above the treetops, pale as memory. You walk slowly to the outer wall, where you once watched the stars from the stone bench. You find your way there without thinking. But someone is already there. The silent monk. The one who never speaks, but always seems to know exactly when to appear. He's seated on the stone, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes open. He looks at you, then gestures, just once, with his hand. Sit. You do. The bench is cold, but not unwelcoming. You both stare out at the pines below. The breeze is light tonight. Not the whispering wind from before, but something calmer, like the forest itself is waiting. And then he does something you've never seen him do. He speaks. Only one word. In a voice so quiet you almost doubt it was real. He says, "Stay." Just that. No context, no instruction, no smile. He closes his eyes again, and doesn't speak again. You sit beside him. Minutes pass, maybe an hour. You don't move, because for the first time, you don't want to go anywhere else. Here's a final bit of historical shadow. The word Sion, from which Korean Zen Buddhism gets its name, comes from the Sanskrit dhyana, meaning meditative absorption. It's not about answers. It's about being so fully present that the need for questions dissolves. Sometimes just staying is the practice, and your quiet trivia for the night? A few temples still preserve benches known as the sitting stone of no instruction. Monks would visit them only when nothing else worked. No chants, no koans, no rituals. Just sitting, with nothing to fix. Historians still debate whether these were assigned or simply discovered by those who needed them. Some say the benches taught more than any master. Others believe they were just quiet places with a good view. Either way, you found one. You stay. And in the space where thoughts used to swarm, there is nothing now, and everything. The morning light creeps in slower today. Like even the sun doesn't want to disturb what the night made sacred. You're still on the bench. You never fell asleep. Not really. You drifted, floated, existed somewhere between breath and breeze. Your back is stiff, your legs tingling, but your mind feels clear, as if someone's wiped fog from a mirror that was always there, just smudged. The silent monk is gone. You don't know when he left. It doesn't matter. He came, he stayed, he spoke. That was enough. You walk down the hill slowly. The world is soft around the edges. The birds chirp again. Nothing unusual about that, but you hear space between their calls now. Rhythm, balance. You can almost feel the sound touching the trees. Back in the courtyard, the monastery is already awake. Monks walk in single file to the side hall for the morning gruel. You blend in without being told. No hesitation, no confusion, just flow. You take your place. Kneel. The rice is warm. The broth is thinner than usual. Your hands are steadier. The monk beside you hands you a folded cloth. A gesture, a knowing. It's time. Packing. You return to your room, if you can even call it that. The mat, the blanket, the corner of a wall where you once stared, wondering what you were doing here. It's all been part of the unwinding. There's nothing to fold, nothing to carry. Your robes are returned to the basket outside the storeroom. A novice gives you your old clothes, creased, slightly musty, and somehow foreign now. You change back into them like putting on a version of yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore. You bow to the novice. He bows lower. And just like that, your time here is almost done. But not quite. A final bell calls you. Not to chant, not to eat, not to scrub a floor until you see your soul in it. This bell calls you to the parting, a closing ritual, rarely explained, never skipped. You're led to a side room you haven't seen before. Small, round, wooden, a circle of cushions on the floor, an altar in the centre, unlit candle, unmarked scroll, a bowl of smooth river stones. The monks gather silently. No one speaks. No one nods at you. But the circle widens to make room. You sit and wait. The abbot enters last. He's not carrying a scripture. He's holding a bowl of water. He sets it gently in the centre of the altar, next to the candle. Then he sits. There's a long silence. Then he lights the candle, dips a hand into the water, flicks it once, gently, into the flame. It hisses. The flame shivers, then calms. Everyone bows. You follow. That's it. No words. But the meaning, like everything else here, is carried in ritual. Water into fire, suffering into stillness, effort into release. Here's your final historical whisper. In many Korean monasteries, departure ceremonies were intentionally minimal. No speeches, no farewells, just symbolic gestures to acknowledge the transformation, however small, that occurred during the stay. Some temples used candles, others bells. One used a silent walk to the gate. But the principle was the same. Let the parting be as intentional as the arrival, and your closing curiosity. Some monks were known to leave behind a single object, a stone, a folded paper, a strand of hair, as a way of saying, I was here, but I'm not holding on. Most of these were cleaned away during daily chores, but once in a while, one was left in place for decades. You leave the round room. A novice waits at the main gate. He bows. You bow back. And then you walk. No procession, no words. Just the sound of your own feet on gravel. The forest watches, unchanged. The trees, those towering, indifferent judges, still stand, still whisper, but they feel less distant now. You cross the gate. You pause. And without knowing why, you whisper a thank you. To no one. To everything. You walk down the path. The same one that once felt narrow, intimidating, wrapped in fog and strange sound. Now it's just a path. You walk it like it's been waiting. You walk it like you were always coming back. You walk it knowing that nothing is ending, only continuing. The path winds gently down the mountain. No signs, no markers, just stone, moss, and earth damp with the night's condensation. You keep walking, each step a small goodbye whispered into the soil. The air smells like pine needles and beginnings. The monastery is behind you now, though it doesn't feel left. More like it folded itself back into the forest, disappearing the way only things made of breath and time can. You reach a small clearing where the trees thin, and the valley below stretches out in layers of green and mist. Somewhere out there, a river glistens. You don't need to know its name. You pause, look back. The monastery is hidden. Nothing visible but a slope of trees and the faint curl of smoke from a chimney you can't quite see. You should keep moving, but your body chooses stillness. You sit on a rock warmed slightly by the morning sun. You listen. The birds are louder now. Your ears notice the difference, and you smile, not because it's over, but because you realize this never leaves you. You remember the kneeling, the chanting, the brushstroke that burned into ash, the whisper, stay. You did. And now, without a sound, you're ready to go. Here's your final historical echo. Korean Seon monks didn't always stay in one temple. Many walked for years between monasteries, travelling from teacher to teacher, from forest to coast, carrying only what they needed. The road was part of the training. Detachment in motion, insight in dust, and your last odd gem. There were reports of monks leaving temples with no destination, simply following the next bell they heard, some travelling over mountains just to sit at the edge of a stranger's field. Wherever you are, one text says, if you're awake, the temple continues. Historians still argue whether this kind of wandering monk called a nunsu, or cloudwater, was common or idealised. Some saw them as rebels, others as the freest beings alive. You stand. The sun is higher now, slicing golden light through the canopy. You begin walking again. Downward, forward, outward. But you don't rush. You don't grip the experience in your mind, trying to trap it, preserve it, post it, or explain it. You let it echo, like a bell. The silence remains inside you. And it's not empty. It is form. It is you. Let's stay here a little longer. Don't get up just yet. Let your breath settle into the rhythm of the forest again, soft and deep. The way it did when the wind moved through pine needles like a voice that didn't need to speak. You've come a long way, from city thoughts and rushing minutes to empty bowls, folded mats, and the hush of 1,000 years pressed into wooden floors. You learned to sit when your legs screamed, to walk when your thoughts tried to run, to stay when everything in you wanted to escape. And in the stillness, you found something else, a quieter version of yourself, one that doesn't need to be explained or named, just known. Now, as you lie there, wherever you are, imagine the cool touch of stone under your fingers, the soft glow of a candle nearby, the taste of barley tea still lingering at the back of your tongue. You're not in a monastery anymore, but the silence came with you. It always does, so breathe with it. Let it surround you like a robe you didn't know you were wearing. No thoughts to fix, no past to chase, no future to plan. Just this, just now. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, let your eyes close. Let the silence keep you company. And if sleep finds you here, it will find you changed, 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 will find you changed.